After getting drunk, I slept with my professor who is 10 years older than me. The blinding sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the phone on the nightstand emitted a deep, musical ringtone, shattering the morning silence. Tap, tap, tap. A hand stretched out from under the pure white hotel sheets, groping the nightstand. After grabbing the phone, it turned off the ringtone. Qing was about to fall back asleep. At that moment, he felt a cold, piercing gaze fall upon him, followed by a sharp, angry female voice. "Who are you?" Still groggy, Qing opened his eyes and looked at the woman lying beside him. She had shoulder-length short hair, delicate features, and skin like porcelain, stunningly beautiful, with a mature charm that surpassed youthful innocence. However, the embarrassment and anger on her face broke the perfect, fragrant morning image, leaving Qing with a sense of regret. "Good morning, sister." Because he had just woken up, Qing's naturally curly hair was messy, but he smiled warmly at the woman in front of him, like the sun at 7 o'clock outside the window. However, his smile did nothing to improve her mood. Instead, it seemed to enrage her further. Her voice turned even colder as she gritted her teeth and asked, "I asked you, who are you?" Qing raised an eyebrow. "Do you have amnesia?" His head was still foggy and aching from the hangover. Hearing his words, the woman recalled the events of yesterday. She had been in a bad mood and went to a bar alone to drown her sorrows. She drank for more than usual, and even her usual strong tolerance for alcohol couldn't prevent her from passing out. But why had she woken up in a hotel bed with a stranger beside her? What had happened last night? She looked down. The suit jacket she had worn earlier was missing, but at least the purple silk blouse was still on her. Before she could feel relieved, she suddenly realized that under the blouse, there was nothing else, and a hot, large hand was resting on her soft body. It seemed to sense her gaze and gave a lewd squeeze. The woman was now completely furious. She grabbed the blanket and pulled it over her body, then kicked Qing hard in the chest, knocking him off the bed with such force that he had no time to react. He fell to the floor with a muffled thud. Hiss. Qing winced and grinned. Sister's temper is as big as her cup size. "Get out." The woman grabbed a pillow and hurled it at Qing's head, shouting, "Get out. Right now." Qing looked innocent. "I haven't had enough sleep." Before he could finish, he saw the woman about to strike him again. He quickly got up and grabbed the phone from the nightstand. All right, I'm leaving." He was only wearing a pair of shorts. He said he was leaving, but his movements were slow, and there was no urgency in them. Bang! The door slammed shut. Qing looked at the door and clicked his tongue. Such a temper. She looked so well behaved when she was asleep. He was staying in a luxury suite. The room was large, and beyond the bedroom, there was a spacious living room. Qing yawned and, bare-chested, walked over to the coffee machine, which hummed as it brewed. He poured himself a cup. As the coffee went down, his mind cleared. He glanced at the door, but there was no sign of it opening. Qing withdrew his gaze and went into the bathroom in the living room to take a shower. Last night had really taken it out of him. The sound of water splashed. The cold water hit him, and the song that had been playing on his phone when he woke up started to play again. It was the same song he had heard just before closing his eyes in his past life. He hummed along to the melody. "My wine, my sports car, my camera, and my gold watch, all carefully chosen. Until everyone is envious, yet I'm still not very rich. With what I still have, I exchange what I don't, though I've already used everything I own." The bathroom was small and self-contained, with surround sound. Qing thought to himself that his singing skills were impressive. His voice was on point, practically the original singer. Click. When he finished his shower and sat on the sofa to check his phone, the bedroom door finally opened. The woman had also showered and changed her clothes. She seemed to have composed herself, though her face was still cold. Her dark hair, not too long, was tied up in a neat ponytail. She wore the same purple blouse, a black A-line skirt, and carried a brown handbag in her left hand. Her right hand held a black blazer, and she wore a pair of black high heels. A standard professional outfit. Coupled with her stunning looks, Qing couldn't help but think to himself. Mature, elegant, intelligent. With a bad temper. Qing silently added. She looked at him, and he met her gaze. After a moment's hesitation, the woman took a stack of money from her bag and said coldly, "I don't know who you are, and I don't need to know." Forget about what happened last night. She tossed the money onto the coffee table in front of him. Qing glanced at the stack of bills, a half smile on his face. Sister, what's this? Payment for services. The woman's face turned pale, seemingly on the verge of exploding. Qing continued, besides, this is my first time doing something like this. I heard first-timers usually get a big red envelope. Implying she should pay more. Her face darkened even further. The woman's voice was devoid of any warmth as she gritted her teeth and said, once you leave this door, you forget about me, and I forget about you. Forget everything that happened last night. With that, she took another stack of money from her pocket and threw it on the table with more force than before. Qing's eyelids twitched. Such a bad temper. His phone was still playing the song on repeat, and the woman caught a glimpse of the screen. She muttered the only remark she would make all day. Of course, it was more like a venting of anger after the ridiculousness of last night, scolding Qing. Nothing accomplished, listening to a tourbillon. With that, she turned and walked towards the door, the sound of her high heels clicking loudly. The door slammed shut behind her, and her figure disappeared from view. All that remained was a faint fragrance in the air. Qing stared at the door, her parting words echoing in his ears. He couldn't help but chuckle. He picked up the stack of money from the table and counted it 5,000. Qing smirked, just enough for last night's hotel bill. He wasn't one to shortchange himself, and the hotel he stayed in last night was a star-rated one, with a cost of exactly 5,000 for the night. So, where's the extra red envelope? He pocketed the money, then got up and went to the bedroom. He grabbed the white t-shirt hanging by the window. The woman had vomited on him last night, but after he washed it, it was nearly dry by morning. Pulling the t-shirt on, he prepared to leave. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the hotel's amenities on the nightstand. They were all unopened. Does she really think something happened? Qing raised an eyebrow. She knows better, right? She was puking all night, and I took care of her. I was too tired to do anything. Qing instinctively felt she would know, but it seemed she had misunderstood. Chapter 2, I won't strive, I'll let others strive. Shooting City. The morning sun in September isn't gentle. Though it's nearly autumn, the heat is unbearable, and the temperature in the air keeps rising, with beads of sweat forming on the forehead that won't stop. This is precisely the morning rush hour. The flow of cars on the road is unceasing. Avoiding the busy main roads, a pink electric scooter is slowly heading toward an entrepreneurial hub. The man riding it hums a tune, clearly in a good mood. The man has natural curly hair, held back by a headband, exposing his forehead. At the intersection, the young women heading to work glance over at him. For the first time, they realize that handsome is a feeling, not just an appearance. His casual movements, even though he is dressed simply, are pleasing to the eye. He is even wearing a pair of flip-flops. Hello, can I add you on WeChat? At the intersection, a girl gathers the courage to speak up. Qing turns his head, flashing a warm smile that makes others feel like they are basking in spring sunshine. Meeting is fate. If we meet again, then we have a deeper connection. We'll talk next time. The girl feels a slight disappointment but quickly realizes that once the light turns green, she'll be able to approach him again. That will be there next time, right? But just as the light turns green, Qing twists the handlebars, speeding away, vanishing from her sight. As the speed increases and the cool breeze blows, the heat is dispelled. Qing hums as he rides. The words from the woman he met this morning echo in his mind. A man who accomplishes nothing should stop listening to things like the Tuor Fei Lun. He has been reborn for almost 3 months. Qing thinks back to his past life. If his past life was considered one of failure, then no one in the world could be called successful. He started from nothing, founded a business, listed it on the stock exchange, broke into the Fortune 500, and even made it onto the rich list. He was, in essence, a top-tier player in the business world. Fine wine, sports cars, gold watches. Everything people envied, he had it all. By the time he was 35, he had made more money than most people could in several lifetimes and enjoyed all the luxuries the world had to offer. If life were like a game, he would be the level-maxed big boss everyone talked about. But, just as the lyrics say, he spent all his time working, toiling away without rest, only to die from exhaustion in the office. Before he closed his eyes, the sound of the Tuor Fei Lun played in his ears. At that moment, what was Yun Qing's final thought? Damn it, I earned all that money and still didn't get to enjoy it. Worked myself to death, and in the end, all I got was a patch of dirt. In the next life, I want to work hard. I'll lie down and relax. I'm going to enjoy life. And so, Yun Qing was reborn, back to 2015, the year he had just graduated from high school. The memories of his past life flickered like a revolving lantern before his eyes, and before he knew it, his pink electric scooter had reached the entrance of an entrepreneurial hub. He muttered to himself as he looked at the sign, "Work hard." I already worked hard in my past life. This time, the word hard work has nothing to do with me. I want to put in a single bit of effort. Of course, not working hard doesn't mean not making money. With his past life's experience, he understands better than anyone the importance of money in society. Having money means being able to enjoy life to the fullest. So, he's not going to work hard. Instead, he is going to let others work hard for him. That's why Yun Qing is here today. Investment. In the past 3 months of the holiday, he took a red envelope of 10,000 yuan from his elders and spent 10 minutes every day trading stocks, buying and selling. In just 3 months, he turned that 10,000 into 1 million. And now, he plans to turn that 1 million into 100 million. In his past life, as a top-tier big boss in the business world, he had been through the ups and downs of the market for years. Starting over, he knows exactly which companies are worth investing in and which ones will dominate the market in the future. At this time, he is using the smallest possible cost to invest in these companies, acquiring shares now. In the future, these companies will grow stronger and help him earn a 100-fold return. In this life, he wants to be the capital. Angel investment is his first step. With his thoughts settled, Yun Qing parked his pink scooter by the roadside and walked into the entrepreneurial hub. He made his way to a company named Jiaoying 125, a startup that specializes in cameras. The company is still in its early stages, facing a funding shortage and on the brink of bankruptcy. Yun Qing's target is exactly this company. In his past life, this company became one of the top 3 brands in the sports camera field a few years later. Its hidden selfie stick feature became a favorite among many snow sports enthusiasts. With a market valuation exceeding 10 billion, it was the top choice for users, second only to a certain company from Xinjiang. But right now, they can't even scrape together $1 million. Yun Qing is 18 this year. As he thinks about the upcoming negotiations over equity details, he knows that his age might lead the other party to underestimate him, which could cause the deal to fall through. As he takes each step forward, a commanding aura of someone who has spent years at the top of the food chain in business emanates from him. The intensity of his presence is immediately obvious from the increasingly respectful looks from the security guard. Walking into Jiaoying 125, he explains his purpose to the receptionist. Soon, Yun Qing is led to a conference room, where the company's CEO, Li Mo, is already waiting for him. Originally, they were supposed to meet yesterday, but Yun Qing was delayed by a drunk woman, the short-tempered woman from this morning. So, the meeting was rescheduled to this morning. After some pleasantries, Yun Qing places his hands on the table, leaning slightly forward with an easygoing demeanor that betrays a maturity well beyond his years. His gaze falls on Li Mo, the CEO of Jiaoying 125. Li Mo feels a sudden sense of unease. "Mr. Li, we've already discussed everything else over the phone. Now, let us talk about equity distribution. I'll keep it short. I'm willing to invest 1 million into Jiaoying, in exchange for 50% of the company." Li Mo is taken aback. 50%? That is impossible. He exclaims in shock, "Mr. Yun, you're taking advantage of us. 1 million. Even the VCs wouldn't ask for this much. 50%. That is half the company." Yun Qing smiles. "Mr. Li, let us make something clear. Right now, I'm choosing you, not the other way around. I could invest in any company with this million, but for you, this is your only option." Looking through the glass door of the conference room at the employees working outside, Yun Qing continues with a smile, "From what I hear, Mr. Li, you can barely pay your employees' salaries, right? This million could be a lifeline for your company. Instead of worrying about giving up 50%, maybe you should think about how to keep your company alive and make it to the next funding round. That way, you'll be able to take home more." Li Mo looks at Yun Qing, his expression shifting between hope and desperation. As Yun Qing said, the choice before him is clear: declare bankruptcy now or give up equity to keep the company running. I know what you're worried about, Qing continues. You're afraid that if you give away too much equity, you'll end up losing control of your company. But don't worry, I won't interfere in your company's decisions. Everything will remain under your control. Qing smiles and adds, moreover, if things go well in the future, you can buy back the shares from me. I'd be happy to sell as long as the price is right. For you, it's a gamble. But for me, it's not that different, is it? If your company doesn't do well, that million will be gone. Venture capital, after all, is all about risk. No one investing in a company can guarantee that their money will generate returns. Most of the time, they end up losing everything. Li Mo is conflicted, deep in thought. What he doesn't realize is that, for Qing, this investment is as predictable as solving a test with the answer key in hand. Jiuying will definitely make money hundreds of times over. Chapter 3, Professional Course Teacher Lu Yao. Does Li Mo have a choice? He doesn't. Jiuying is currently in its seed stage and hasn't yet scaled up. There are countless camera companies in the market, and Jiuying doesn't even rank. Li Mo has looked for venture capital, but there are very few private equity firms that are interested in such small projects. The companies willing to invest are usually skeptical, and angel investments are even harder to come by because he doesn't have the connections. Even if he did know someone, after reviewing the company's operating details, most VCs concluded that investing in them would only result in a loss. Qing is their only option. After a long pause, Li Mo made up his mind, I need to sign a share repurchase agreement. 50% is beyond what I can accept. If the company succeeds in the future, with Qing holding 50% of the shares, as long as he is willing, the company could very well be renamed after him. Li Mo didn't want to work hard only for Qing to take all the credit. Of course, that's fine, Qing smiled. 20% is enough for me. I'll keep 30%, and you can buy back the shares at market value, but the premise is you need to find a way to keep the company alive. Otherwise, signing anything won't matter. Li Mo nodded silently. The contract details were quickly drawn up, and the share repurchase agreement was prepared. Qing signed both contracts and immediately transferred the funds. He now owned 50% of Jiuying's shares. Qing pondered for a moment. Rather than letting Jiuying develop slowly, he might as well help them speed up the process and make money for himself quicker. Mr. Li, I have a suggestion. Qing smiled. Instead of competing with so many people in the camera industry, why not try shifting your focus to sports cameras? The competition is much smaller. Also, have you ever noticed the stick in the video shot by action cameras? You could try removing that stick. To an outsider, Qing's suggestion might seem like no big deal, but Li Mo's eyes lit up with realization, his spirit suddenly awakened. He looked at Qing with a newfound sense of astonishment. He had originally thought Qing was just a rich second generation with money, but it seemed he was much more than that. A simple remark from Qing had completely cleared up the company's dilemma. The removal of the selfie stick function could even become their brand signature. Li Mo said, Mr. Yun, if it weren't for your ID card being right in front of me, I wouldn't believe you're only 18. Qing smiled but didn't respond. After everything was settled, Qing stood up to leave. Li Mo stood to see him off, but Qing waved him off, only asking to be taken to the door of the building. Before leaving, he encouraged Li Mo, Mr. Li, Jiuying needs to work hard from here on out. Help me make some money. Li Mo. So, we work hard, and you just count the money, ho. Afternoon. Qing University of Technology. Qing's pink little electric scooter entered the university and parked in the student dormitory area. He walked to a dorm on the 5th floor. Today was September 2nd. Freshman registration at Qing University took 2 days. Qing had already registered yesterday and completed all the necessary procedures. He returned to his dorm in room 503. The dorm had a bunk bed with a desk underneath. There were 4 beds in total, and the other 3 students had already checked in yesterday, so Qing was now familiar with them. Yo! Skipping the first day of school already. Jar Jar Qing, tell us, which senior girl did you spend the night with? I saw a lot of senior girls adding you on WeChat yesterday. As soon as Qing entered the dorm, he heard a loud voice. It was from Liu Siyuan, who slept on the left side of the door. He was a tall, thin guy who tried hard to comb his hair back in a mature style. Yun Qing, having lived another life, didn't he go to Beijing this time? Instead, he stayed in Chuchen and enrolled in a major he was completely unfamiliar with: chemical engineering. His reasoning was simple: he didn't want to walk the same path as before. As for why chemical engineering? Because he didn't understand it and wanted to see if he could, which in his view, made no real difference what he chose to study. Hearing Liu Siyuan's words, Yun Qing immediately switched to the mindset of a university student and replied disdainfully, "I've already gotten tired of 18-year-old girls. Why does it have to be a senior? Can't it be a professor?" In his previous life, wherever Yun Qing went, he could have anything he wanted. Although he was busy with work, there was never a shortage of women vying for his attention, and he couldn't even remember how many 18-year-olds wanted him. He was truly tired of it. "Shit! You're eyeing the professors now." From the right side of the room, ahead popped up a guy wearing glasses named Qian Mingcharn. Yun Qing sneered, "As long as you're bold enough, even a professor can take maternity leave. TCH. TCH. Scumbag." After spending a day together, the four of them were now familiar with each other. They had all seen senior girls desperately trying to add Yun Qing on WeChat. To put it simply, as long as Yun Qing was willing, his girlfriends could easily make all the boys on campus jealous. Scumbag and player were the most accurate descriptions of him. However, he seemed genuinely uninterested in 18-year-old girls. There were many who wanted to add him, but he hadn't agreed to a single one. This made the others in the dorm gnash their teeth. What's up with this professor? Just now, our class group had a message. It seems our course advisor is away for a few days, and another professional course professor will take over temporarily, said Hong Xiao, a tall guy who was elected as the dorm leader. Qian Mingcharn asked, "Oh? Really? Who is it?" Hong Xiao turned around, a mysterious smile on his face. "You guys won't believe it. You'll be shocked when I tell you." Liu Siyuan asked, "Liu Yao? Professor Liu?" "Shit." Hong Xiao glared. "I haven't even said anything yet. Where are you getting your information from?" "Well, with the way you're acting, it must be Professor Liu." Hearing their exchange, Yun Qing asked curiously, "What's up with Professor Liu? You guys seem to be reacting strangely." Yun Qing wasn't in the dorm last night, so he was clueless about the school's affairs. Liu Siyuan explained, "I heard from the upperclassmen that this Professor Liu has a really bad temper. She's one of the strictest professors in the whole school. Don't offend the dean, but definitely don't offend her. If she's in charge of us during the next few days of military training, we'll probably have a really hard time." From the way the upperclassmen reacted, it seemed that dealing with her could be really tough. Hong Xiao added, "I checked the faculty list this morning, and the good news is, Professor Liu is very beautiful. She is considered the face of the chemical engineering department and even Chuchen University. We'll be in for a treat these next few days." Yun Qing raised an eyebrow, recalling the woman from this morning. She seemed to fit their description: bad temper and beautiful. But, he thought, it couldn't be that coincidental. Yun Qing asked, "How beautiful is she? Do you have a picture? I want to see." "Shit, Jar Jar Qing, you really have your eye on the professor. Wanting to see doesn't mean I'm interested." "No, no one took a picture of her," Hong Xiao said. "But there's a class meeting tonight, so we'll see her then." Qian Mingcharn sighed, "I heard that Professor Liu is already 28 and still unmarried. A woman who is still unmarried at her age is going to be difficult to handle. I think she teaches polymer chemistry. We're going to have a hard time with her. I heard from one of the senior girls that for other courses, you can slack off, but with Professor Liu, if you piss her off, she'll deduct your regular grades. If you perform poorly on the exam, other teachers might give you a break, but she won't. Anyone who skips her class is dead." Chapter for temporary counselor. Through Qian Mingcharn's description, Professor Liu, whom I had never met before, looked like a female Tyrannosaurus Rex. She would scold female students until they cried while doing experiments, and contact parents because of bad test scores. These things that rarely happened to other professors were commonplace for her. Whenever students from the School of Chemical Engineering mentioned her name, they were terrified. Even the students of Shooting Polytechnic School knew about Liu Yao's bad reputation. Even though they have entered university, students are still afraid of their homeroom teachers and deans in high school. Lu Yao is just like that to the students of Shooting Polytechnic. Doesn't that mean she won't be able to skip classes from now on? Not only can you not run away, you also have to listen carefully. If she asks any questions and you can't answer them, you have to copy the lesson plan. I heard that a senior student had been copied 100 times before. 100 times. My hands cramped just thinking about it. I heard that the senior sister would avoid Professor Lu when she saw him later. She would be scared to death if she looked at her. Hiss. Listening to the conversation between several people, compared to their fear of Lu Yao, Qing had the opposite attitude. He thought of the many recent graduates who applied for jobs in his previous life, many of whom were from prestigious universities. But in his opinion, it was no different from trash. He said he graduated from a prestigious university, but in fact he just played games for 4 years in school. He didn't learn anything he should have learned, and he only thought about getting good grades from the teachers in the exams. His ability to withstand stress is as fragile as that of a child who has not grown up. When encountering a little setback in life, he would cry and yell for help, and then after that he would follow the online trend and call himself Kong Iji who could not take off his long gown. Qing has no problem with Kong Iji. But those people who call him that are really flattering him. Qing said, I think Professor Lu is quite responsible. A professor who is willing to spend time on your homework is something that many people would love to have. As for the girl who was scolded for doing the experiment you just mentioned, chemistry experiments are more or less dangerous. He scolded her in the hope that she would not get hurt due to improper operation. Just like the reviews online later. The teachers you meet in college may be the ones you may meet in your lifetime, they are the top figures in society. If you don't cherish such an opportunity, why do you still curse them? Although in Qing's opinion, he has seen many such people. When several people were saying bad things about someone, Qing's words made them silent. After thinking about it, it seemed that this was really the truth. Liu Siyuan said, it seems that this is the case. Tian Mingchang said, when other professors teach, you can choose whether to listen or not. At most, they just roll your name. It has nothing to do with them whether you come or not. They are indeed not as serious and responsible as Professor Lu. Hong Xiao nodded, thinking about it this way, Professor Lu seems to be not bad. We can't believe everything those seniors say. Several people's attitude towards Lu Yao has changed. Young people can always talk about anything. Once the temporary counselor's topic is over, they will quickly start talking about other things. Qing sat down at his desk and turned on the computer. Stop wasting time and get on board. Go up. Shoot. Go. Among several people. Hong Xiao is the biggest, good at sports, and a big fool. Tian Mingcharn looks a little dull and a bit like a nerd. Only Liu Siyuan has the best gaming skills. In several game sessions, his statistics were the most impressive. While turning on the computer, Liu Siyuan asked, Brother Yun, you're not going to update your comics today? You've been late for several days. I have no inspiration today, so I'll start the game first. I need to collect some materials. After getting to know each other, they learned. During the summer vacation, Qing posted a suspense comic of his own on a comic website. Due to its novel subject matter and setting, it became a little famous on the internet. Draw comics. This is what Qing has been doing since elementary school. In his previous life, he had forgotten about his business because of starting a company, but he was picked up again in this life. Of course, more of it is to complete the regrets that were not completed in the previous life. He was determined not to work hard. That's really not trying hard. In the nearly 3 months since the holiday, I have only updated about 10 chapters, and I will occasionally take time to draw when I remember to. In his words, he draws when he remembers, and doesn't draw if he doesn't remember. Of course, most of the time he doesn't draw even when he remembers. As for the painting? Whoever wants to watch it can watch it, I'm too lazy to watch it anyway. Can you get material from playing games? Qing smiled mysteriously, everything can be used as material. As long as you want, going out to wash your feet can be considered as material. Several people logged into the game, and gunshots were heard in the dormitory. Qing couldn't remember how long it had been since he last played games, but at this moment, sitting in the dormitory playing games with a few other people, he seemed to have regained that familiar feeling. 7 o'clock in the evening. After dinner, several people went to the teaching building of the School of Chemical Engineering. Entering the classroom, there was constant chattering. Yun Qing and the three people from the dormitory sat down in the back row near the door. The students all arrived at school yesterday and are not familiar with each other. At this time, everyone got to know the classmates around them. Yun Qing was inconspicuous when he entered the classroom and sat in the back row, but after the first girl noticed him, several more girls turned around to look at him. Liu Siyuan smacked his lips and said sourly, as expected of a scumbag youth, even though we were sitting so far back, girls still noticed him. Hong Xiao smiled and said, "That's right. Just look at how lazily he sits on the chair. His posture is obviously ugly, but it looks very handsome on him." He added, "If I were a girl, I would like them all." Yun Qing is a good-looking man with sharp features. His every move and gesture is totally inconsistent with his age. It is hard for girls of 18 or 19 not to be fascinated by him. Even when picking his feet, he does it with a sense of freedom. Yun Qing glanced at Hong Xiao, especially his strong arms. "Fortunately you are not a girl, otherwise I can't hold you down." Da. 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 Several people were talking. There was a powerful sound of high heels tapping in the corridor outside the door. From the sound alone, one could tell that the person coming was very powerful. When Yun Qing heard the noise, his chair fell backwards and his head tilted. I looked through the door into the corridor and saw a woman in a white coat, shoulder-length hair, and gold-rimmed glasses walking around the corner. Mature, sexy and full of charm. The woman's delicate face showed no unnecessary expression. She had a folder tucked under her arm and looked like she had just come out of a laboratory. Yun Qing noticed that the other party's destination was exactly the classroom where he was. He quickly retracted his gaze and sat up straight with a strange look in his eyes. Is it really such a coincidence? "Lu Yao, Professor Lu. The woman who kicked me out of bed this morning." A few seconds later, the beautiful figure appeared at the door. She walked up to the podium without saying a word, but the noisy classroom suddenly became quiet. Apparently all the students in the class had heard of Lu Yao's bad reputation. Upon seeing this, the two senior class teachers sitting in the front row quickly stood up and greeted Professor Lu. Lu Yao just nodded slightly at them. Then she scanned everyone in the classroom, and when she looked at the figure in the last row near the door, her pupils shrank slightly. She is so familiar with this person. Especially that naturally curly hair. Although he looked much more energetic, handsome and sunny compared to this morning, Lu Yao could recognize him even if he turned grey. Her chest rose and fell slightly, and her tone was cold and stern. "You, come out here." Chapter 5. Good evening, sister. The sudden loud shouting caught everyone off guard. What's going on? Why does Professor Lu look so angry? The students sitting in the front row turned around one after another. Liu Siyuan and others in the back row were also looking left and right, wondering who Lu Yao was calling. Who was so bold as to offend Professor Lu just after the start of the school term? Then, they saw Yun Qing slowly stand up. Liu Siyuan was stunned. "Brother Yun, what's going on? What happened between you and Professor Lu? She looks very angry." Hong Xiao opened his mouth and said, "Although Professor Lu's strictness is good for us, isn't it too early?" Most importantly, they all heard the anger in Lu Yao's tone. Yun Qing offended her. But this is only the second day of school. No, strictly speaking, today is still the registration period and school starts tomorrow. Yun Qing was not as nervous as they were. When he saw Lu Yao, he was mentally prepared. He smiled and said to them, "Don't worry, Professor Lu is a very good person. Tian Mingchan, Brother Yun, I hope you'll be a good person when you come back." Yun Qing just smiled at them. Seeing Lu Yao on the podium turn around and leave the classroom, Yun Qing followed him out through the back door and caught up with Lu Yao's pace. Everyone in the classroom looked at each other. Front row. The two acting class teachers looked at each other. What's going on? Have no idea. Professor Lu looks very angry. Did that freshman offend Professor Lu so quickly? He seemed to be smiling when he went out just now. You have such a big heart. Da. 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 Lu Yao walked in front without looking back, her high heels touching the concrete slab, making a clear sound. Judging from her pace, Yun Qing judged that the other party was very angry. Angry? What's wrong with seeing me? They walked all their way to the end of the corridor, to a corner where no students would come. Then Lu Yao turned around, his face cold, and looked directly at Yun Qing. Yunqing looked like she was completely unaware that she was suppressing her anger. He tried to guess why Lu Yao was angry. She probably thought that she took advantage of her situation by sleeping with her while she was drunk, but the problem is that her understanding of sleeping is different from mine. I just slept and did nothing else. Yunqing's smile was still warm, with the youthful enthusiasm of a man. Good evening, sister, we meet again, it's fate. Hearing this, Lu Yao's face became even colder. She thought of the words, good morning, sister, she said when she woke up in the morning. Now it's dark, and I meet you again. You still want me to say good evening to you? Knowing that this was a school and there would be students passing by, Lu Yao lowered his voice and said sternly, I remember I should have said that we wouldn't see each other again after we walked out of that door. Why did you still chase me to school? Because I'm a student here. Yesterday. What? Lu Yao's voice rose an octave, and he was obviously surprised by the answer. Yunqing smiled just the right amount, because I'm a student here. What a wonderful fate. I didn't expect you to be a teacher here. Hearing this, Lu Yao fell silent and his expression became even uglier. So, did she sleep with her students last night, or were they students in class 1 of Yinghua who would take his class for 4 years? If it were anyone else, she would be able to pretend nothing happened. But the other party is a student of the school. Can't see it when you look up, but can see it when you look down. Yunqing leaned against the wall, his movements lazily. Sister, you are not going to make things difficult for me, are you? There was no response. Lu Yao just stared at him with an unclear meaning. A long while passed. Do you think I should just pretend nothing happened? I admit that I was drunk last night. I won't bother you, but you should know better than me why you showed up at the hotel and why you slept next to me. She almost said this through gritted teeth. Yunqing had no doubt that if he wasn't so pretty, she would have punched him. This woman has a bad temper, I saw it this morning. Yunqing said, Sister, I think you misunderstood. That's enough. Lu Yao said coldly, I don't want to hear your excuses. I have already said what I should say clearly this morning. I don't want to repeat myself. I will apply to the college and will no longer teach your class. After today, when we meet at school, you and I will just be strangers. Look, you don't listen to my explanation again. Now Yunqing can be sure that Professor Lu has never experienced that kind of thing. As the person involved, doesn't she feel anything herself? If I hear you spreading rumors at school. She didn't finish her words, but Yunqing could understand the threat contained in her words. Elder sister. He tried to explain again. Lu Yao interrupted, please address me by my title at school. I'm not your sister. Forget it, I'm too lazy to explain. Yunqing shrugged and chuckled, but before the teacher-student relationship, didn't we have other relationships first? Other relationships? Lu Yao's eyes were cold without any warmth, his lips were tightly pursed, and he didn't say a word. Okay, sister. She was still staring at him. Okay, Professor Lu. Lu Yao then retracted his gaze and said sternly, remember what I said this morning. But sister, Professor Lu, the 5,000 this morning is only enough for the room. The big red envelope you promised hasn't been given to me yet. You should have seen the name of the hotel when you came out. It really costs 5,000 a night there. Hearing this, Lu Yao did not respond and turned away. Judging from the frequency of the sound of her high heels, she was even angrier than when she came, especially because of Yunqing's indifference throughout the whole process. Does he do this kind of thing often? Why shouldn't he care? Is this your first time? Is it your first time? Lu Yao and Yunqing entered the classroom almost at the same time, and the classmates in the classroom looked at them in unison. These gazes made Lu Yao's face even colder. So, in the following class meeting, she didn't look happy at all. The whole classroom could feel a sense of low pressure, and everyone was terrified. Front row. The two sophomore class teachers looked at each other. Does your class have Professor Lu's class tomorrow? Without. It's broken, I have it. I can already sense that Professor Lu's class tomorrow will be filled with blood and our class will die miserably. It's okay. Someone has already suffered before you. I heard that the class that had Professor Lu's class today was scolded to bits. One girl was scolded so much that she cried twice. Who the hell has offended our Professor Lu? How did you offend Professor Lu? Hong Xiao lowered his voice and asked the same question. Yunqing said, I didn't provoke her, we had a very pleasant conversation. Did you have a good chat? Liu Siyuan said, look at Professor Lu's expression, look at the temperature in the classroom, there's no need to turn on the air conditioner, this is called a very pleasant conversation. Yunqing shrugged, there was nothing he could do. He tried to explain to Lu Yao just now, but it was difficult to have a friendly conversation with a woman in an angry state. She doesn't even plan to teach our class anymore, what can I do? Let's wait until she calms down. Qian Mingcharn said, instead of dwelling on Professor Lu's question, why don't we think about where to have supper later? This is our first dinner together since the start of the semester, so we have to eat something good, right? Chapter 6, I'm not called Jar Jar Qing for nothing. There was nothing important in the first class meeting at the start of school. It was mainly about things to pay attention to during military training, and these things could be handled by the acting class teacher. Lu Yao's role here is more of a supervisory one, just going through the motions. Because of Yunqing's sudden appearance, Lu Yao was in a bad mood and didn't say much the whole time. His ugly face made all the classmates frightened. Fortunately, the class meeting ended successfully. When leaving, Lu Yao didn't say a word, nor did he look at Yunqing in the back row. After the military training is over, when the counselor comes back, she will hand over to other teachers and will not attend their classes for professional courses. In the future, when they meet at school, they will pretend not to see each other. Just like she said, they are just strangers to each other. Yunqing didn't care much about it. Yesterday you got drunk and blamed me, and this morning you kicked me off the bed. I wanted to explain to you but you didn't listen. I thought I should wait until she felt a little better before explaining it to her. Leave the classroom. Hong Xiao and a few others talked about the late-night snack gathering again. Young people are always very interested in this and asked if there were any delicious late-night snack stalls nearby. Finally, we came to the conclusion that we should go outside the campus, leave the university town, cross the bridge and go to a food stall in the science city in the south that was highly praised by senior students. 3 o'clock. Outside the school, in Science City, there is a food stall serving seafood and barbecue. As soon as he sat down, Liu Siyuan lowered his voice, winked, and then 3 pairs of eyes looked in the direction he pointed. Pretty. I give it 99 points. The girls here are really good, their bodies are amazing. I wonder what they look like from the front. They shouldn't be bad. Several people showed LSP eyes and looked at a girl who was looking around on the side of the road. She seemed to be waiting for someone. When she turned around, Hong Xiao was shocked and the table shook. Fuck. Old Xiao, what's wrong with you? You scared me. Hong Xiao looked at the girl and opened his mouth, becoming visibly nervous. Hong Xiao said, that is a girl from my high school. How come she is also in shooting? Also in the university town. Liu Siyuan was surprised. Oh? An acquaintance. Hong Xiao shook his head. No, not familiar, I know her, but she doesn't know me. Yunqing nodded. That's Secret Love, by Yue Guang. The big guy didn't say anything, hesitating and just looking at the back, which was tantamount to agreeing with Yunqing's statement. Go after someone you like. Hesitation will only lead to failure. I. Hong Xiao hesitated and shook his head. I am not worthy of her. She comes from a good family and her academic performance in high school is top-notch. There are so many people who like her. She definitely won't like me like this. Besides, I can't give her the life she wants. If we get married in the future. Listening to his words, Yunqing frowned and interrupted him. No. Yunqing said, she doesn't even know your name yet, but you're already fantasizing about marrying her. Have you even thought of a name for your child? Aren't you going to make your sister act like a fool with your mentality? When young people are in love, are they all so good at divergent thinking that they think 100 steps ahead before taking the first step? Although this idea is responsible, my sister doesn't buy it. Are you still into pure love these days? What's the difference between that and fighting World War II with bare hands? My brother Yun has something to say. Jar Jar Qing starts to exert his strength. Liu Siyuan and Qian Mingchang's eyes lit up and they began to instigate. My brother Yun is right. Instead of thinking about whether it's suitable or not, why not take the first step and get to know the other person first and let the other person know you? Hurry up before the other party leaves. The two of them encouraged each other. Hong Xiao stared at that look for a long time, made up his mind, and turned to look at Yunqing hoping to get guidance from the master. Brother Yun, teach me how to do it. If I can catch up with her, I will work like a cow and a horse for you in the next few years. Qing smiled and said, first of all, you should correct your attitude. Don't get nervous when you see people, and even more nervous when you speak. If you are timid, it will definitely give girls a bad first impression. Be more generous and speak more naturally when chatting. Hong Xiao pondered. Although he was a big guy, he was very cautious. It's a bit difficult. When I see her, I still subconsciously get nervous. You could tell from the shock she gave when she turned around. Qing pointed at an old lady walking by the road and asked, do you get nervous when you see an old lady? That certainly won't happen. Why? Why? Qing said calmly, because you subconsciously have thoughts about girls, you care about her opinions and comments about you, and you care about whether your behavior will make her dislike you. But the more you care, the worse your performance will be. So, look at that girl as you would an old lady, and try to act as natural as possible, then you won't be nervous, understand? Hong Xiao nodded, not quite understanding. Liu Siyuan and Qian Mingchang's eyes were sparkling, they were more serious than listening to the lectures, and they couldn't wait to take out their mobile phones to take notes. Sure enough, he has not called Jar Jar Qing for nothing. Then I'll tell you how to do it. You said you were high school classmates with her. This relationship itself has natural advantages. When a girl goes to a strange place, she will definitely be nervous and afraid, and she will be on guard against strangers. But you and her are high school classmates, from the same place, so subconsciously she will relax her guard towards you, and even become dependent on you and have a good impression of you. Qing paused and continued, now you appear in front of her as a high school classmate. She will be closer to you than to others. You can talk to her about which class you are in, which class she is in, what happened in the school before, and that person in the school sports meeting was you. But you must remember one thing, don't chat too much with others. You are still strangers now, so stop at the topic. In the end, you can find some excuse, saying that we are all old classmates and are not familiar with the new school. We can leave contact information and help each other in the future. Wouldn't you get the contact information? Fuck. 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 Brother Yun, please accept my knees. Qing waved his hand and said, don't waste time, go quickly, everyone will leave soon. Hong Xiao did not hesitate while speaking. With the tactical guidance from the military advisor, he was now full of confidence and walked towards the girl with confident steps. Then I saw him walking past the girl, looking back inadvertently, and starting a conversation with the girl with a surprised look on his face. Liu Siyuan was stunned, did it really work? He had always longed to have a sweet love in college, but he didn't expect that the big and strong Hong Xiao in the dormitory would be the first to get out of being single. Ahem. Qian Mingchan cleared his throat and said, Brother Yun, if I meet someone I like, can you teach me a few tricks? I need your guidance, and I will work like a slave for you for 4 years. Liu Siyuan quickly followed and said that he wanted one too. Let's talk about it when you meet. Qing waved his hand and prepared to get up to buy a bottle of water. Before leaving, he said, you two should keep track of the time. When the 5 minutes are up, go and call him back. Don't chat with girls for too long. Liu Siyuan asked, Brother Yun, you're not going. You are the military advisor, so you should come, right? Qing smiled and said, oh my god, I'm afraid that girl will change her mind. Boil. Did anyone say that? There is only alcohol in the food stalls, and you have to go to the nearby supermarket to buy water. Qing casually asked about the location of the supermarket, walked around for several times, got a bottle of mineral water from the supermarket, and then brought a bottle of drink for each of his 3 adopted sons. Leaving the supermarket and about to walk back. Bang! The glass fell to the ground with a harsh sound. Qing turned his head and noticed that there seemed to be a quarrel in a nearby restaurant. Their hotel's soundproofing was pretty good, so I couldn't hear any sound from inside, but looking at the 2 figures in the private room by the window, I thought the source of the quarrel was there. Qing had no intention of watching the fun and was about to look away. Only. When he glanced at the woman in front of the blushing woman, his expression was slightly stunned. What a coincidence, sister, we meet again. You seem to be in trouble? Chapter 7 I'm her boyfriend. Restaurants are not like food stalls. It was already past 10 o'clock and the restaurant was about to close. There were only a few waiters and diners sitting sparsely in the restaurant. As the sound of breaking glass came from one of the private rooms, everyone in the hall pricked up their ears and no longer paid attention to the food. Yun Qing walked into the lobby and glanced at the crowd watching the excitement. He walked up to the counter and said in a serious tone, "Are you still open at this time?" "Well, sir, you want to eat." "How many people?" Yun Qing said coldly, "Let everyone in here get out, and those who have finished eating should leave quickly." "Are." The receptionist looked confused and was about to ask who you were, but Yun Qing had no intention of explaining and turned around to head towards the private room. The manager in the lobby came over and looked at the receptionist in confusion. "Who is that person?" "Have no idea." The receptionist shook his head. "You came here and asked me why I hadn't closed yet and why I was kicking customers out. Then ignore him." "Well." The receptionist hesitated and said, "Manager, the guests have almost finished eating. Why don't we let them go? From the look and temperament of that person just now, he seems to be someone very serious. Let's not cause trouble for the boss." The manager frowned and looked at Yun Qing's back. He also noticed it when Yun Qing came in. The aura there did seem to be unusual. He headed towards the private room where the quarrel was taking place. Could it be the boss's family affair? Don't want outsiders to know? The practice of treating people differently is common everywhere, especially in the service industry. The manager was just an employee. If he caused any trouble for the boss, he would be the one who would suffer in the end. It was almost closing time. The manager nodded and said, "Let the guests who have finished eating leave. Don't join in the fun. Others should stay away from the private room." "Yes. You are already 28, what do you want to do if you don't get married?" In the private room by the window, Lin Shufan looked at her daughter and said sternly, "Do you know who the person I asked you to meet yesterday was? He was Mr. Chen's son, and he earns $1 million a year, and you just scolded him. If he hadn't called the school and called my teacher, I wouldn't have gone to see him at all. Why does he have my teacher's phone number? Did you give it to him? The middle-aged woman has a bad temper. Liu Yao is also a powder keg that can explode at any time." As soon as Lin Shufan finished speaking, she immediately fought back. Lin Shufan said sarcastically, Teacher, your teacher is closer to you than your own mother. So you know you are my mother." Liu Yao said coldly, "I thought only the one surnamed Wang was your biological daughter. Would a biological mother push her own daughter into the fire pit? Don't you know what kind of person the man surnamed Chen is? You keep saying that you are doing this for my own good, but I think you are doing it for your husband's factory. Why don't you let your daughter surnamed Wang marry him?" Lin Shufan said, "That's your father, Xiaoman is your sister. My father's last name is Liu, not Wang." There was no warmth in Liu Yao's tone. "As for how I grew up in the Wang family, you, my biological mother, should know better than me." Hearing this, Lin Shufan was immediately furious and could not suppress her anger. "Whose food, drink and things have you eaten and used since you were a child? Who worked so hard to raise you? How can you say such things now? You should let your students hear what their teacher is like. He is ungrateful and has no filial piety. How can such a person be a teacher? What a joke!" Instantly, Liu Yao calmed down and said calmly, "I haven't taken a penny from you since I graduated from high school. Over the years, I have given you hundreds of thousands of yuan and transferred them to the Wang family. Isn't that enough? Why, how about I give you my life as compensation?" Separated by a wall. Yun Qing, who was about to open the door handle, paused when he heard this. He suddenly recalled a very casual episode in his previous life. At that time, his company had just been established for 2 years. By chance, he was chatting with the boss of a pharmaceutical company, and the other party talked about the recent situation of their company. He said that the students from Shooting Polytechnic recruited by their company had recently collectively requested leave to return to shooting, and would resign if they were not given leave. Yun Qing asked why at that time. The boss only knew a rough idea and said that it was because a professor in the school took some dangerous substances used in the laboratory home and took them and committed suicide. Yun Qing forgot how he answered the other party. But now, combining the boss's words with what Liu Yao said at this moment, the professor who took the dangerous substance is most likely Liu Yao. As for the reason, it is not difficult to imagine. It was the woman in the house who brought the matter to the school. The huge pressure of public opinion overwhelmed Liu Yao and made her take very extreme actions. Yun Qing, who had originally been thinking whether the situation could be reconciled, now had a change of heart. Bang! When he opened the door panel hit the wall with a dull sound, and Yun Qing's face was gloomy. Without looking at Lu Yao, who was standing beside him, his eyes fell on Lin Shufan. I was wondering why our Yao was so angry when she came back yesterday. So this is what happened. You even arranged a blind date for her? Auntie, you don't seem to respect me very much, let alone her. The sudden appearance of the figure startled Lu Yao, and he could see the person clearly. What are you doing here? Who are you? Two voices sounded at the same time. Qing turned around and gave Lu Yao a gentle smile, then stood beside her, put his arm around her shoulders, and looked directly at Lin Shufan. I'm his boyfriend, so, Auntie, do you think what you did is appropriate? As he spoke, Qing once again released his full aura and rushed straight towards Lin Shufan coldly. Compared to Lu Yao's violent temper, Qing did not show any anger on his face. Only when facing his Lin Shufan, she suddenly felt a sense of danger and fear in her heart. This young boy is very dangerous. Boyfriend. Lin Shufan's face was gloomy. Anyone can be called a boyfriend. Qing said calmly, we woke up in the same bed this morning, do you think we are boyfriends? Hearing this, the two women in the room frowned at the same time. Lin Shufan subconsciously looked at Lu Yao. Logically, if the boy was talking nonsense, Lu Yao would definitely deny it. She would not lie about such things. Even though they are arguing now. But Lu Yao was silent. Lin Shufan smiled coldly. Lu Yao, you have really become more capable. Qing said coldly, it is not up to you to decide whether she is capable or not, and you don't need to use filial piety to pressure her. Before enjoying your obligations, you should fulfill your corresponding responsibilities. You obviously did not fulfill your responsibilities. I didn't know before, but now I know, so don't let me hear anything. Call her teacher and don't let me hear any rumors about her being unfilial at school. Don't even bother finding her any blind dates. Your husband runs a factory, right? If I hear or see one of the things I just said, your husband's factory will go bankrupt the next day. Please believe me, I can do it. His tone remained calm, without much change in intonation, as if he was calmly narrating something. But the calmer she was, the more fear Lin Shufan felt in her heart. Lu Yao turned his head to look at Qing, his expression changing repeatedly as he looked at the hand on his shoulder. She has seen the student file information. Qing. Just an ordinary family. There was a strong threat in his words, but how dare he say that? Also, from the first time we met until now, what he has behaved like from the beginning to the end is really what an 18-year-old boy should behave like. Chapter 8, I just slept last night. Lin Shufan left. She didn't know if it was Qing's words that worked, or if the oppressive feeling he emanated was too strong, but she left in a hurry. Only Qing and Lu Yao were left in the private room. Qing returned to his lazy state, leaning on the long sofa in the private room and opening a bottle of drink. Lu Yao sat down again, folding his arms across his chest. Why are you here? At this time, Lu Yao had already changed his clothes. It's different from being in the classroom. Black suit, white shirt, black miniskirt, long legs wrapped in black stockings. Qing's eyes stayed on the black stockings on her legs for a moment. He remembered that Lu Yao was not wearing black stockings when she left in the morning. Throw away last night's. After taking a sip of water, Qing smiled and said, Sister, didn't we agree that we would be strangers starting tomorrow? It's only 10 o'clock now, and there are still 2 hours until tomorrow. Who told you that? You said so. Qing put down the water and looked at her. Why, you don't want to be a stranger to me anymore? Lu Yao did not respond to him. He leaned back slightly, crossed his legs, and looked at him from a distance. However, Qing still had a smile on her face. Normally, boys of this age would subconsciously get nervous when seeing her, but whether it was yesterday or now, he was very natural and calm. In other words, shameless. You really don't look like an 18-year-old freshman. Qing raised an eyebrow. Didn't sister feel the vitality emanating from my 18-year-old body last night? Shut up. Oh. Qing was disappointed. Lu Yao pondered for a long time and said, you shouldn't be here, let alone say those words to her. You are threatening her, which will only bring you trouble. Qing just looked at her without responding. Mute. You won't tell me to shut up. Say. Sister, don't be so irritable all day, or you'll get wrinkles. Seeing that she was about to get angry again, Qing straightened his attitude. When I'm out, I gave myself my identity. Would she come to check my identity information? Besides, isn't this what I'm trying to do to help my sister solve the problem? Now it seems that the effect is okay. He paused and added, if you still need to pretend to be a boyfriend in the future, I can do this part-time when I have time. Unnecessary. She retracted her gaze and fell on the bottles of liquor on the table. She poured herself a glass and saw Yunqing still sitting on the sofa, not ready to leave. She glanced at him coldly. Why don't you leave? Why are you staying here? Yunqing glanced at the white wine on the table, which was over 50 degrees. Her eyelids twitched. She seemed to be an alcoholic. I think there are some things that need explaining. Yunqing said, you seem to have misunderstood. We were just lying in bed last night and nothing happened. I am not interested in unconscious people. I didn't explain this morning because I thought you understood. After all, you were one of the parties involved. But it seems that my sister is still a virgin at the age of 28. Hearing this, Yunqing saw Lu Yao let out a long breath, but then glared at him with shame and anger. You seem to understand a lot. I just have more theoretical knowledge in this area. He. Lu Yao sneered, picked up the wine glass and drank it in one gulp, which made Yunqing's eyelids jump again. Sister, tons of it. He continued, I wanted to explain last night, but you didn't give me a chance to explain, so I just didn't bother to say it. I'm telling you now because I know that you're not in a good mood, and I hope that telling you this will make you feel better. You don't have to apply to the college because of me. After all, other people will always have wild thoughts if you apply for a weird reason. We are innocent and nothing happened. There is no need to be shy about it. Of course, if you need a part-time boyfriend business, I'm online all the time. Unnecessary. Yunqing's words did have some effect. At least Lu Yao's tense shoulders relaxed at this moment. She didn't comment on Yunqing's words. Pick up your glass and have another drink. Yunqing continued, sister usually doesn't have to be so extreme when dealing with things. Just like today when facing your mother, she could have used gentler words to make her give up the idea. If you want to completely cut off ties with that family, you can also use a more gentle approach. The other party cannot find fault with you and accuse you of being unfilial. Being too extreme will only lead to the worst outcome. Just like what Lu Yao said at the end, he would give her his life as compensation. In her previous life, Lu Yao probably went towards the most extreme result. It is not known whether her mother would be sad in the end, but all she had left was regret. Lu Yao said coldly, are you teaching me how to do it? Yunqing said, I'm just giving advice. Lu Yao was silent, as if he was thinking about his words, or looking for reasons to refute him. What you said just now seemed quite extreme. That's because I know she's hurting her sister. If I don't say that, she'll just hurt you endlessly. I don't want to see that scene. Words can hurt the most, especially when they come from someone close to you. Yunqing is not the type to meddle in other people's business, but he looked at Lu Yao seriously, with a teasing tone in his voice. After all, we have slept together before. In response, a bottle of hotel mineral water flew over and was placed on the table. Yunqing was quick-eyed and quick-handed and dodged it. Clean and innocent. On the one hand, he said that they had slept together, and on the other hand, he said that we were innocent. Lu Yao had never seen such a student. It's more than just shameless. Lu Yao was too lazy to pay attention to him and picked up the glass to continue drinking. One cup after another. Wait until a full bottle of white wine is finished. She turned around and found Yunqing still sitting lazily on the sofa, sending messages to someone on his cell phone. Lu Yao frowned, why don't you leave? To accompany you. After finishing the chat with roommates, Hong Xiao seemed to be making good progress. Yunqing put down his phone and looked at her, after all, we have slept together. I don't want you to fall into someone else's arms after getting drunk. I will feel hurt. Oh. The first time I heard him say he had slept with her, I still felt angry even though I had explained it clearly. But after hearing it again, especially seeing Yunqing's expression, his anger faded a lot. Just a sneer in response. Yesterday was just an accident, but Lu Yao was too lazy to explain to him. On weekdays, she seldom drinks outside, and mostly drinks alone at home. Even when she is outside, the chances of getting her drunk are very rare. She has been drinking to relieve her sorrows for many years. Her alcohol tolerance is beyond people's imagination. Usually, she is still sober even when many people are drunk. The reason she got so drunk yesterday was because she was in a bad mood. Of course, I'm not in a very good mood today. Although Yunqing's explanation made her feel a little better, once Lin Shufan made a fuss, her mood became extremely bad and very terrible. So, as expected, she was drunk again. Yunqing stood beside the table, looking at the white wine bottles piled up on the table, his eyelids twitching. Then he looked at Lu Yao, who was lying unconscious on the table. There's no such way to drink water, right? I also think chapter 9 is super good. Fortunately, Yunqing had spent the whole night with her last night, so he had some experience in how to deal with a drunk woman. He skillfully pulled up Lu Yao's arms, placed them on his shoulders, and with a little force, lifted her up on his back. He picked up her handbag that was on the chair. Make sure you have everything with you. Yunqing held the handbag in the crook of her arm and grasped her legs with both hands to make sure she wouldn't suddenly get drunk and fall down. Her hair rubbed against her cheeks. Yunqing said to himself, "You are definitely the first person who let me serve a drunk woman, and for 2 consecutive nights. If I didn't know you were in a bad mood, I wouldn't even look at you even if you died of drinking here today. Professor Lu, you are such a worry." He carried her out of the private room. It was already 12 o'clock in the evening and the restaurant should have closed long ago. However, perhaps because of Yunqing's words when he came in, the manager was still in the store, drowsy on the counter. Yunqing walked to the counter and knocked on it lightly with his hand. The manager woke up immediately. Yunqing took out his mobile phone from his pocket, scanned the code and paid the other party 1,500 yuan without saying anything. 500 yuan is for the meal and Lu Yao's drinking expenses. 1,000 yuan was the fee for the restaurant to stay open so late, and also to drive away the guests who came to watch the fun as Yunqing wished. The manager heard the payment tone. "Sir, it doesn't take that much." Yunqing didn't explain and walked out of the hotel with Lu Yao on his back. In his previous life, it was not his turn to pay when he went out. In this life, although he did not have much in his pocket, in addition to the 1 million, he had 20,000 yuan left for pocket money. It was not much, but this buddy never wronged himself when he went out, and he was not short of money. He would pay as much as he was entitled to. The temperature difference between day and night in shooting is quite large. It is very hot during the day and very cold at night. After going out and feeling the breeze, Yunqing suddenly felt refreshed. She wanted to shake Lu Yao and ask her where she lived. Out of the corner of her eye she noticed the keychain hanging on her handbag, which had the access card to the community and the key to her house on it. Daoran Garden. Yunqing looked at the words on the access card and squinted. This is a new property that opened in Science City last year. There was a renovation key that had not been torn off, and on the key was her floor and house number. Number 1201, Building 1, 1st Street. Knowing where her home was, Yunqing estimated that it would only take a few minutes to walk there. He put the key back in the bag and walked away carrying her on his back. Seeing some students coming over for supper on the road, Yunqing would push the hair off Lu Yao's forehead to cover her face so that passers-by could not see her appearance clearly. She certainly didn't want to be recognized. After wandering around, Yunqing entered Daoran Garden Community, found the location of her house, got in the elevator, and went up to the 12th floor. There are 2 households on 1 floor in the house. Arriving at the door, Yunqing put her down from his back, turned the key and opened the door of her house. Lu Yao was still dazed, but seemed to be a little more awake. Seeing everything familiar in front of the door, she muttered softly, "Home." "Well, we're home." She walked slowly and drunkenly, past Yunqing and entered the house first. Then Yunqing saw her standing at the entrance, like a doorman in a restaurant, bending down with one hand reaching into the house. "Welcome, Yunqing." Lu Yao raised his head. He was not as cold and irritable as he had been during the day. He had a silly smile on his face. "You are the first guest in my house. Welcome. Your shoes are in the shoe cabinet on the right. You need to change your shoes when you enter the door." Yunqing, "Okay." He stepped inside. However, when I saw the shoe cabinet in the entrance hall for the first time, I was stunned. There were several boxes of beer on the cabinet. I looked across the entrance to the living room, and the corners of my mouth couldn't help twitching. The living room of Lu Yao's house, how should I describe it? It can be seen that it has just been renovated. There is a sofa on the left, and behind the sofa is a built-in bookcase filled with books. Opposite the sofa is a TV screen on a mobile stand. The balcony outside is empty except for a lazy chair. The layout is square, the decoration is reasonable, and the furniture is complete. But this was not what surprised Qing. What surprised him was the messy pile of beer cans on the ground. You say it's dirty, but it's quite clean. You can see from many details that Liu Yao has cleaned it. But you said it was clean, there were cans all over the floor. Noticing Qing's dull eyes, Liu Yao tilted his head and said vaguely, "What's wrong? Isn't my house beautiful?" Qing, beautiful, very beautiful. I think it's beautiful too. Under Liu Yao's gaze, Qing changed his shoes. As soon as he stood up, Liu Yao grabbed his hand and took him to visit her new home. She pulled him to introduce them like a little kid who wanted to share his toys with others. For example, what was not visible at the entrance just now were more beer boxes, an entire refrigerator filled with cans of beer, and more cans scattered on the floor. Liu Yao also saw those cans. She stood still and said, "Whoever litters in my house has no manners. Qing. This home should have no one else but you." In addition to beer, Qing also saw other things in her house, including Liu Yao's strange collecting habits. In the drawer, there were at least thousands of beer bottle caps, hundreds of chopsticks delivered with takeout, and tags that were torn off from clothes she bought but not thrown away. They were not expensive items, but she kept them all, as if they were brought from her previous house. Qing looked at these things and didn't know what he was thinking. Liu Yao was dazed, as if he had thought of something. He pulled him up and walked towards the second bedroom. "I'll share my favorite things with you." Qing could see it. Their house originally had 3 bedrooms, but was later changed to 2 bedrooms, with the second bedroom being another room in the house. I opened the door to the second bedroom, turned on the light, and everything in the bedroom came into view. The whole room is decorated with pink walls, which gives it a very dreamy feeling for girls. When you open the door, you will see a small bed by the window. On the right-hand side is a computer desk that shines with strange light. On the left-hand side is a shelf with all kinds of cute dolls on it. There is a carpet on the floor and a small sofa. The overall look is like a little girl's princess world. However, what attracted Qing's attention were the dozen or so Barbie dolls that had not been unpacked on the top of the shelf. Qing's heart skipped a beat when he saw the dolls. Liu Yao followed his gaze and looked at the Barbie dolls. He was very happy that Qing noticed them first. "I bought these in the past few years. Aren't they beautiful?" She is like a child who shares her toys with other children and longs for recognition from her friends. Qing nodded, "Very beautiful. Let me introduce you to it." Liu Yao took 2 steps forward and pointed at the doll on the far left, which was also the ugliest and cheapest among the many dolls. "I bought this when I was 18. I served dishes for them during the National Day that year. I was so tired that my feet were numb. Then I saved up my money and bought this on my birthday as a present for my 18th birthday. I have never been willing to open it. Isn't it super beautiful?" Qing didn't look at any of the dolls. He was looking at Liu Yao and nodded. "It's very pretty." She smiled foolishly, "I think it looks great too." Chapter 10 I'm the most beautiful. When she was drunk, every movement she made was naive and innocent, unlike the coldness and irritability she showed when she was sober. The strong contrast made Qing feel that she was inexplicably cute. "I also feel inexplicably sad." Pointing to the first doll and getting Qing's approval, Liu Yao continued to share with him with great interest. The second doll looked more finely crafted than the first, but it was still ugly. Liu Yao spoke seriously, and he listened carefully. "I bought this doll when I was 19 years old and worked as a tutor in their family. I used the money I earned from tutoring to buy it for a little girl who was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. The family was very generous in paying for it. On the little girl's birthday, they even invited me to eat cake with her." She showed a thoughtful look and said softly, "The cake was so big, and their parents also gave her a big doll. The sister took me to her room, it was so beautiful, and then I thought, I want to have such a beautiful room in the future. Look, isn't this room super beautiful?" Qing nodded, "Super beautiful." He could probably understand why Liu Yao decorated the second bedroom like this and bought so many dolls. That was to make up for what was missing in childhood. Liu Yao had a smile on her face, but Qing could easily imagine how she felt when she saw other little girls being loved by their parents, being pampered, and having their rooms decorated like princess castles. Envy, sadness, regret. After receiving Yun Qing's affirmation again, Lu Yao smiled widely. But then, she thought of her birthday. She lowered her head, her tone full of grievance and sadness, and pursed her lips. But no one remembered my birthday, I didn't have a big cake, and no one gave me a beautiful doll. Yun Qing said in a low voice, "When is your birthday?" "December 13th. I remember." Lu Yao raised his head, and Yun Qing said seriously, "I will remember your birthday in the future, and I will buy you a big cake and give you a beautiful doll." Her bright eyes flashed with surprise. "Really? Real? Hook." She stretched out her hand and hooked her little finger, just like the kids in kindergarten making pinky promises with their friends. Yun Qing wanted to say, "Professor Lu, you are so childish." But he understood that this was the truest and purest side of Lu Yao that she hid deep in her heart, wrapped in a stubborn shell and would never reveal to outsiders. Yun Qing stretched out his hand and hooked his little finger with hers. "We'll make a promise to each other for 100 years and never change." After saying that, Lu Yao shook his hand vigorously and put his thumb on his thumb to seal their agreement. After they made the pinky promise, Yun Qing did not let go immediately. Lu Yao frowned and looked at him in confusion. Yun Qing asked, "Lu Yao, do you know who I am? Who are you?" Her eyes were blurry and confused, and there was a faint smell of alcohol as she spoke, which penetrated into Yun Qing's nostrils. Yun Qing was looking at her, and she was also looking at Yun Qing. The room was quiet for a long time, and Lu Yao seemed to be thinking. "Yun Qing, Yinghua Class 1. Lu Yao finally remembered. She stretched out her other hand, stood on tiptoe, and rubbed Yun Qing's hair vigorously. "I remember your ugly hair, Yun Qing." She looked dazed and disgusted. Yun Qing chuckled and let go of his hand. "You're a bad person." Lu Yao pouted and continued. "Why am I a bad person?" Lu Yao thought for a moment and said, "You are a bad student who doesn't listen. You are a troublemaker, and you bully me." Yun Qing raised his brows. "So this is your impression of me, Professor Lu? But I never said anything excessive to you from beginning to end. Last night and tonight, when you were drunk, I was there to take care of you. If it were someone else who had ill intentions towards you, you would be at the mercy of the enemy. How did I bully you?" Lu Yao said seriously, "You slept with me, you asked me for a red envelope, and you even came to my school. I hate it most when people come to school. I like my current job very much, and you can't come to disturb me." To her, school is not just a school, but also a refuge, a place where she can escape from all the unpleasant, chaotic and messy things in the world. That's why she was so angry when she saw Yun Qing, and that's why she was disgusted by Lin Shufan calling the school. Even though she clearly didn't like blind dates, she still ran out and scolded that person. Yun Qing understood. "You can't even sleep together. You can only sleep together after you get married," Lu Yao said in a clear voice. Bang bang. Again. Yun Qing could feel his own heartbeat clearly. "So do you want to get married?" "I don't want to." She was very straightforward, and Yun Qing nodded slightly. However, she was not very clear-headed and did not continue to dwell on this issue. She really wanted to share her thoughts with the first guest of her new home. Lu Yao raised his head and pointed his finger at the next doll. 20th birthday. 21st birthday. 25th birthday. The styles of the dolls are more exquisite and have better texture than the first few. I guess they are not cheap. Behind each doll, there is a bitterness that only she knows. And these are her birthday presents to herself every year. From the way she introduced the doll, Yun Qing had a general understanding of Lu Yao's life from the time he was 18 to 28. She had good grades in school and worked part-time to earn a living. "I met my current teacher when I was a junior. Her teacher suggested that she pursue a PhD, believing that she had great talent in scientific research. That teacher continued to guide her through her undergraduate, master's and doctoral studies, and she stayed at Shooting Institute of Technology. She has now become Professor Lu, who is feared by students of the School of Chemical Engineering." It was not difficult for Yun Qing to imagine how much that teacher meant to her. He was the benefactor of her life. Vomit. Lu Yao suddenly felt a tightness in his chest and looked at Yun Qing eagerly. "I want to vomit." So Yun Qing had to support her, walk out of the second bedroom, and go into the bathroom next to the living room and vomit loudly. The miserable appearance was completely different from that in the daytime. Patting her on the back, Yun Qing took a tissue from the sink and asked her to wipe her mouth herself. Yun Qing shook his head. "They say girls should be clean, pretty and fragrant, but why do I always see you in your most embarrassing state? He had seen many women in his previous life. Everyone shows their best in front of him, with exquisite makeup, gorgeous clothes, and the best mood, and he will never let himself see anything he doesn't want to see. But you ended up letting me see the worst of it. Lu Yao was a little unhappy when she heard this. She frowned, raised her head, and pouted, "Am I not beautiful? The light from overhead shines down. Her hair, her face. Her drunken, colorful little expression." Yunqing smiled, "You are beautiful, very beautiful, super beautiful." She raised her chin, quite proudly. "I'm the most beautiful. You're the most beautiful." Chapter 11. Lu Yao, little boy, go to sleep. After vomiting, Lu Yao felt better. Yunqing glanced at the clock hanging on the wall of the living room. After some thought, he realized that it was already 1 o'clock in the middle of the night and it was very late. Professor Lu has work to do at school tomorrow and he also has to go to military training. Looking at Lu Yao at this moment, he really looked like a kindergarten kid. Yunqing used the tone of a kindergarten teacher. "Lu Yao, little friend, it's time to go to bed now. Okay, go to sleep." Lu Yao raised his little head, spoke softly, and nodded obediently. "Walk out of the bathroom." Yunqing supported her and walked to the innermost room of the corridor, which was obviously Lu Yao's bedroom. He pushed open the bedroom door and turned on the light. The style is completely different from the second bedroom. The decoration of the master bedroom looks more mature than the pink second bedroom. The furniture is made of solid materials with deep colors and textures. A huge 1-meter wide picture frame hangs behind the bed. The curtains, carpets and quilt covers are all dark purple, which is unique. Yunqing thought of the purple shirt Lu Yao wore in the morning. She seemed to like purple very much. Help her lie down on the bed and cover her with a blanket. Lu Yao chattered away, wanting to continue introducing the decoration of the master bedroom to him, and her desire to share was very strong. "Close your little mouth and look at the teacher with your big eyes." Yunqing looked like a kindergarten teacher. As expected, Lu Yao shut up and looked at him. Yunqing said in a pinched voice, "It's bedtime now. Teachers like children who sleep well. Isn't Lu Yao the best child?" Lu Yao raised his hand and said loudly, "It is me." "Then go to sleep, okay? Good. Put up the quilt." Lu Yao pulled up the quilt, just covering his neck. This appearance is completely different from Professor Lu, who was wearing a white coat, walking into the classroom with firm steps, and exuding maturity and rationality today. Yunqing could think of it. When Lu Yao wakes up tomorrow, she will probably be furious when she thinks about how Qian Gang and Yunqing tried to coax her to sleep last night. She kicked herself out of bed this morning. I wonder what will happen tomorrow morning. Yunqing couldn't imagine it. Lu Yao opened his eyes again and moved around in the quilt. What's wrong? Uncomfortable. I need to take off my clothes. Then you will probably be even angrier when you wake up tomorrow morning, right? After saying this, Lu Yao was about to pull back the quilt, stand up and take off her clothes, but Yunqing quickly stopped her. Professor Lu, you really want to kill me? Yunqing hurriedly said, you can't take off your clothes in front of others. Cover yourself with the quilt and take off your clothes inside the quilt. This is embarrassing. Do you understand? Lu Yao tucked his chin in, showing a shy expression, and repeated, shame on you. Yes, shame on you. Yunqing said, take it off yourself inside the quilt. There was a rustling sound from under the sheets, followed by a white shirt, a black skirt, and black stockings being thrown out one by one. Yunqing's eyelids twitched as he watched. Then, Lu Yao suddenly turned sideways, revealing his back, and said in an aggrieved voice, I can't reach it, help me. The back clasp of the purple bra was exposed. Yunqing turned her face away, stretched out a hand and helped her unbutton it. Thanks. You're welcome. Professor Lu will definitely be angry. He is sure. So he picked up the white shirt from the ground and handed it to her, asking her to at least put on a shirt, otherwise he was afraid that the situation would get out of control if Professor Lu woke up in the morning. Seeing this, Lu Yao showed reluctance on his face, and after much persuasion, he put his clothes back on. Seeing her lying down on the bed again and closing her eyes, Yunqing turned off the light in the room, turned on the night light on the bedside table, and turned to leave the room. After a hangover, you will feel uncomfortable when you wake up the next morning. Yunqing went into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. There was very little stuff inside, but there happened to be ingredients for making sobering soup, so she turned on the fire and cooked some for her. Time to wait. Qing noticed the messy living room, sighed, and helped her collect the scattered cans on the floor and put them into bags. Holding the sobering soup, I returned to the bedroom. Qing was just about to wake her up and let her drink something before going back to sleep, but he heard a faint whimpering sound coming from under the sheets. Lift up a corner of the quilt. There were tears in the corners of Lu Yao's eyes while she was sleeping. She was crying. She was murmuring unconsciously, and Qing moved closer to barely hear what she was saying. They don't love me, no one likes me. Bang! 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 The bedroom was plunged into darkness, with a faint light flickering on the bedside table. Everything around seemed to be in a deep sleep, and there was silence, but Qing could clearly feel every beat of his heart. He placed the hangover soup on the bedside and looked at Lu Yao, who was sleeping. There was a long silence. The third time. This is the third time I heard my own heartbeat. It has been almost 3 months since Qing was reborn. During these 3 months, Qing was very clear about his condition. He could feel that even though he was alive again, his heart seemed to be dead. Numb, empty, grey. Whether he is dealing with familiar people, the new living environment, or everything happening before his eyes, he looks at it from a god's perspective, without emotion or the slightest emotional fluctuation. This was influenced by his long-term control of emotions, but more importantly, he was looking at everything from a bystander's perspective from beginning to end. He has not truly integrated into this world. He couldn't feel alive. But after stepping into Lu Yao's new home, his heart began to beat. It beat when he saw the dolls, when he heard Lu Yao say that she was the cutest, and when he heard her whispering in her sleep. The ground under my feet becomes real, the faint fragrance in my nose becomes real, and everything becomes flesh and blood. Her whispers made his heart tighten subconsciously. This moment. He really wanted to reach out and wipe away her tears, then hold her in his arms and tell her that it was not like that, someone loved her. However, reason prevailed and he did not reach out his hand. Qing stood up and prepared to leave. It was impossible to go back to school at this time, so he thought it would be better to get a room outside and sleep there for the night and go back in the morning. Just as he turned around, a sudden force stopped his movement, and a hand stretched out from the quilt and grabbed the corner of his clothes. Don't go. Qing stopped moving again. He looked at the hand. He didn't know what scene appeared in Lu Yao's dream, but she held him by the hand and wouldn't let him leave. Looking at the curled-up figure again, it is so small and makes people feel distressed. Good. I'm not leaving. There happened to be a chair in the room. Qing pulled a chair over, sat beside the bed, held her hand, and his eyes fell on her wrist. At the same time, Qing's brain was extremely active, and scenes flashed quickly, from the chance encounter with Lu Yao last night, to waking up in the morning, to meeting at school, to the restaurant, and to everything that happened in the room just now. Like a slide, it surges and reappears. Qing said he didn't work hard, and he really didn't work hard. After traveling through time, he controlled himself to use his brain for no more than half an hour every day. Using his brain is tiring, so he doesn't want to move. But at this moment, he was in the best state he was in his previous life when the company was facing important decisions. Looking at Lu Yao, who was sleeping, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Chapter 12. Lu Yao, listen carefully. Lu Yao, 28 years old, is a professor at Qing University of Technology. She had a bad temper and was feared by her students, who often cried after being scolded by her. However, after her death in her previous life, she was remembered by her graduated students as a responsible teacher. Her parents divorced early and she grew up in her stepfather's house. After graduating from high school, she left that home and lived alone. She studied hard and worked hard until she became a university professor. Her mother has a bad temper and is not nice to her. Recently, she is planning to arrange a blind date for her in order to achieve certain goals through her marriage. Over the years, Lu Yao has been sending a lot of money to the other party. Despite this, she still relied on her own efforts and bought a house in a good location in Qing, and she seemed to have a car as well. University professors' salaries are not low. Through direct or indirect means of understanding, Lu Yao's information emerged in Qing's mind. He seemed to be doing some project analysis. Analyze everything about Lu Yao, from family, to personality, to future. first and foremost is family. Usually what is lacking in childhood, we will find ways to make up for it when we grow up. She lacked care in her childhood, so there was a special room in her home to display the dolls she bought. The dolls were bought with money she earned in various ways on her birthday every year. None of these dolls were unpacked, just left there. After her mother divorced, she soon had a new child in her second marriage. It is easy to imagine what her stepfather's attitude was towards his wife and another child with someone else. In that family, she must have been neglected, even deliberately ignored, and no one even remembered her birthday. From this, it is not difficult to infer that her personality is greatly influenced by her original family. She may hide it well on weekdays, but from her childlike state when drunk, longing for love and attention, it can be seen that she is very fragile under the thick shell. I need alcohol every day to fall asleep. Lu Yao has a bad temper and is quite fierce. It may be influenced by her mother, or it may be a disguise she gives herself. Qing looked at Lu Yao, who was sleeping, his eyes deep. To be able to become a professor at a domestic double first-class university in her 20s, her abilities must be outstanding and her working capacity strong. However, judging from the rumors in her previous life and the brief contact we had, she was not very good at handling family issues. It's easy to go to the other extreme. She is 28 years old and has never had a boyfriend. She knows nothing about those things. Even if you ask her if she wants to get married when she is drunk, she will say no. She may adopt an evasive attitude towards personal emotional issues. I desire to be loved, but I am afraid of getting hurt, so the best way is not to love. It will be very difficult to get into her heart. But with this kind of personality, once she gets into a relationship, she will treat the other person wholeheartedly and will never allow the other person to betray her in any way emotionally. Qing stroked the back of her hand. She has a bad temper, likes to drink, and her personality is greatly influenced by her original family. It is extremely difficult to get into her heart, but she is simple and honest inside, and there lives a pure and innocent little girl in her heart. If she messes around with other women outside, she may very well become the protagonist of the next dismemberment case. Is such a person suitable to be a life partner? Can I change her? Can I get into her heart? In addition to these, she was 28 years old and I was 18, a 10-year age difference. She was a teacher and I was a student, and there were social barriers to public opinion. Can I take these questions? Can she? Let's make another assumption. If the person standing in front of me was an 18-year-old woman who did not have these problems, what choice would I make? 18 years old. Although it sounds very beautiful, girls of this age do not have a comprehensive understanding of the world and are curious about everything outside. Qing is no longer the top-level boss worth tens of billions in his previous life. Can I grow up with someone? Can the other party accept a lazy person who does nothing all day, is unwilling to work hard, and is unwilling to turn things around? Would you follow a luxury car if you saw one? Or are you struggling with an RV? Although such speculation is somewhat extreme and full of uncertainty, Qing usually considers the worst outcome. Even if none of these existed, there would certainly be various other problems. Qing knew very well that a perfectly compatible lover did not exist. In comparison, Lu Yao already has enough understanding of the world, is mature and rational, and does not need my guidance. She will be wholeheartedly good to only one person. She is also very beautiful, and her appearance is not inferior to that of an 18-year-old. Even if I'm a bit of a scumbag, I still have a chance to appear on the front page of social news. Qing is a shrewd businessman. When looking at any issue, a businessman will use interests as the criterion. Interests do not only refer to money, but also emotions, time and energy. Qing tried to ask himself, after accepting the above questions, what would he need to pay in this process? Time, energy, and sincerity. Sincere. Qing had been in contact with many women in his previous life, but he had never been sincere to any of them. He was very clear that sincerity was an extremely scarce resource. Those people came for his money, and it was not worth exchanging money for sincerity. If you have to give your heart to everyone and love too many people, you will lose the ability to love. He doesn't want to, so the deal isn't worth it. Therefore, without giving his true heart, he naturally cannot be called a playboy. He wants to keep his true heart for the person who will accompany him for his whole life. Is it worth it to use your time, energy and sincerity to exchange for a beautiful woman who is devoted to her partner, mature and rational enough, has a stable career, is simple and flawless, but has problems that need to be solved? Qing narrowed his eyes. It's worth it. Finally, the most fundamental question is, do you have a good impression of Liu Yao? Have. If not, he would have pushed her away when she fell drunk in his arms last night. There was no chance of entering that restaurant tonight. Most importantly, she allowed herself to feel her heartbeat, to become alive again, with the throbbing of her heart accompanying it. He liked this woman and didn't want to see her sad. When this sentence came to his mind, Qing already had the answer, but there were still two questions that he could not confirm. Whether her magnetic field matches yours and whether you can get along with her. If there are a lot of conflicts in daily life, getting along with each other will be very tiring. Besides, he was determined to be a lazy guy. His past life experience told him that many sisters who kept young handsome men would ask them to work hard. I just want your money. I want to work hard. What else do I need you for? Liu Yao wouldn't ask him to work hard, but Qing doesn't want to work hard at all. Then, can I get into her heart? If you can't get in, don't end up looking like a dog licker. Two questions need to be understood slowly. But he had made up his mind. Qing held her hand, stood up, leaned over slightly, the hot air from his breath hitting her cheek, and his voice was low. Liu Yao, listen carefully. Yesterday you fell into my arms after getting drunk. After I sent you to the hotel, you used your legs to hold me down and prevent me from leaving. Now you are taking the initiative to hold my hand and still won't let me leave. This is the third time. You took the initiative 3 times. Now it's my turn. Next, I'll tell you my plan. I'm going to take a cold shower and try my best to catch a cold. After that, I'll lie down beside your bed and wait for you to wake up. Although I mean to take advantage of your sympathy, I'm the one who's suffering after all. Besides, it's hard to get close to my 28-year-old sister. If my sympathy doesn't attract your attention, and you still hate me and think I'm a bad person, then I'll stop here. If you notice, then I'll move on to the next step. Anyway, I have to win your heart. Also, you probably don't want to recall what happened tonight. Anyone whose secrets are discovered will always be unhappy. So, I'm going to drink some wine later. You still have a lot of cans. Put them by the bed. Anyway, I have a blackout and I don't remember anything that happened tonight. I am willing to give my heart to you, but the prerequisite is that you have to be willing too. Two love-brained people in love, that's what love is, isn't it? I wish our lovers will finally get married. Chapter 13. He treats me like a child. Hiss. Still waking up with the familiar hangover. The difference is that today when I woke up I didn't feel as uncomfortable as usual. Although my head was still dizzy, at least I was awake. The sunlight poured into the room and Liu Yao slowly opened his eyes. The first thing she saw was a person sitting in a chair, slumped over the bed, with naturally curly hair on his head. This natural curl is so familiar to her. Qing. Why is he in my house? Liu Yao's pupils widened and he quickly looked down. Just like yesterday, he was still wearing the shirt, but it was empty inside. It's time to wonder what happened again. Memories came back in fragments. Lin Shufan called her and she went out to meet her. They had a big fight and Qing suddenly opened the door and came in, saying that he was her boyfriend. Then, Qing explained what happened the night before. It's still clear up to here. Her memory afterwards began to blur. She drank a lot of wine, Qing carried her home, and she stood at the door and shouted, "Welcome." She kicked the can on the ground away and cursed people for being uncivilized and throwing garbage everywhere. She took Qing to the room and introduced the doll to her. I'm the cutest. I am the most beautiful. Super beautiful. Is Liu Yao the best behaved kid? I am. Cover yourself with the quilt, shame on you. Shame on you. Then it became intermittent, with scenes of her half asleep and half awake, getting up to go to the bathroom to vomit, and occasional clips of Qing drinking alone. Recording everything that happened last night, especially the scene where I shouted, "I'm the cutest." Liu Yao was so embarrassed and angry that he wished he could fall asleep and never wake up. What am I doing? Liu Yao patted his head, regretting it. Not only did I bring him home, but I also got drunk and acted crazy. Am I sick? Wait, did he say, look at the teacher with your big eyes and keep your little mouth shut? He? The opposite of Qiangang. It's the opposite of Qiangang. Is he treating me like a kindergarten kid? The most outrageous thing is that I did it. Thinking of the tone of his voice, Lu Yao wanted to grab a pillow and cover his head with it to force him to lose his memory. It's shameful, so shameful. Fortunately, she held back. Thinking about how I had to wake this guy up in the middle of the night last night, and he had to help me go to the toilet to vomit, and I couldn't sleep well after that, I felt really exhausted. If she beat him up, she would be somewhat ungrateful. But when he thought about how he actually showed that look in front of him, especially bringing him into that room, his expression suddenly turned ugly. No one wants their privacy to be pried into, let alone her. The person who was snooping was actually his own student. Holding his forehead, Lu Yao did not get up, but just lowered his head, staring at the hairband on Yunqing's head that flipped up the curly hair. It's so ugly for a grown man to wear a headband. Does he remember what happened last night? Will he make fun of me? Then the next day the whole school knew that the serious Professor Lu actually hid a bunch of dolls at home. People wondered if she had a problem with her brain. The more he thought about Lu Yao, the uglier his expression became. Etc. Lu Yao suddenly noticed that Yunqing had placed 24 beer cans on the bedside table and on the floor. It seemed like he drank a lot of alcohol last night. He had been drinking when he got up to throw up. How's his drinking capacity? Hope arose in her heart. If Yunqing could not drink as much, would he also drink until he blacked out and forget what happened last night? Forget it. Forget it. Nothing happened last night, nothing. Lu Yao muttered to himself, as if hoping to delete the memory in Yunqing's mind in this way, and preferably forget it completely. Well. Lying on the edge of the bed. Yunqing, who was sleeping, suddenly raised his foot and stepped on the bed board. A huge force surged under his feet, kicking the mattress crooked. He fell to the ground under the huge force. Lu Yao was startled. He looked at Yunqing's face again and saw beads of sweat on his forehead. He was breathing heavily and had already woken up. Lu Yao frowned. Did you have a nightmare? It's out of control. Lu Yao seemed to see that the moment Yunqing said this, his face was no longer as calm and composed as before. Instead, there was anger, fear, and murderous intent. But he quickly suppressed it and turned it into confusion. Yunqing was puzzled. Why am I here? What do you think? I don't remember. Lu Yao raised his eyebrows slightly and seemed to be in a much happier mood. It seemed that the spell he had just silently recited was effective. Did he really drink himself into a blackout? Forget it, forget it. Yunqing continued, last night, you forced me to drink for a long time. After you fell asleep, I drank a lot more. It seems like, hey, why don't I remember anything? I came back and kept you drinking for a long time. Is this true? Lu Yao couldn't remember. But that's not important. What is important is that he seems to have really forgotten everything that happened last night. Good, this is good. Lu Yao cleared his throat and became serious. You are only 18, don't drink for no reason, it's bad for your health, try not to drink in the future. Yunqing smiled and said, Sister, it's inappropriate for you to say that, isn't it? Who drinks like this 2 nights in a row? Lu Yao said coldly, I am your teacher, not your sister, don't yell at me. When he woke up yesterday morning, the first person he heard was Yunqing's sister. Although they were of different ages, he had no problem calling her sister. But Lu Yao always felt that there was a sense of evil in it. Yunqing said, we are not in school now. We are called by titles in school. Lu Yao really wanted to refute him, but then he thought that after all, he had taken care of her all night, so there was no need to fuss over such a trivial matter. She said instead, thank you for last night. You're welcome. Thanks, you're welcome. Another fragment of memory came flooding into my mind. Lu Yao's expression suddenly became unnatural, and his voice became colder. Get out, I need to wash up, I'll take you to school later. Okay, sister. Yunqing rubbed his hair and understood her unnaturalness. Yunqing knew that there were 2 bathrooms in Lu Yao's house last night. After all, it was a 3-bedroom house converted into a 2-bedroom house, and the extra space was added to the master bedroom. Cloakroom, washroom, work area. Her master bedroom is nicely decorated. Yunqing walked out of the room and went to the bathroom in the living room to wash his face. He touched his forehead to feel the temperature and could clearly feel it was hot. The effect is pretty good. Cold and fever. Looking at myself in the mirror, Lu Yao just happened to come out. She put on a loose nightgown, held an unopened toothbrush and towel in her hand, and handed it to him without saying anything. Thanks. Yunqing took it and prepared to wash up. At this time, Lu Yao noticed his pale face. Why is your face so pale? Yunqing said vaguely, I didn't rest well. It's best to let her discover it on her own. Lu Yao didn't care and went back to the master bedroom. Boys always wash very quickly. After Yunqing finished, he went out to the living room and lay on the sofa for a long time before Lu Yao came out of the room. At this time, she had changed into another set of clothes, a purple shirt and black jeans. She looked mature yet casual and in good spirits. Better than Yunqing. Neither of them said much. Yunqing followed her down to the underground garage. He also saw the car Lu Yao was driving, a champagne-colored BMW 5 Series with a retro feel. It seemed that Professor Lu was indeed quite wealthy. In the car, Yunqing dozed off with his eyes closed. Although he had to play the victim, he still had military training today. He had a cold and a fever, and he didn't sleep well last night. If Professor Lu really didn't say anything later, he wouldn't be able to bear it. Lu Yao's home is not far from Shooting Institute of Technology. Less than 10 minutes drive away. After driving across the bridge and entering the school, Lu Yao found a place where no one could notice him and dropped Yunqing off the car. Yunqing staggered back to the dormitory. Change into military training uniform first. Chapter 14 Beautiful Vision. One night out, another night out. After all, it is the first day of school and the first day of military training. Freshmen are always full of curiosity about the new life that is about to come. It wasn't like later, when I lay dead in the dormitory every day. Dormitory 503. At 7 o'clock in the morning, all three of them were already up. The first thing Yunqing heard when he entered the dormitory was Liu Siyuan's loud complaints. It was like this in the first 2 days of school. What would happen in the future? Do you not see anyone at night? What are you yelling about? Yunqing lazily returned to his bed, opened the wardrobe, took out the military training uniform, put it on the table, and took off his clothes. He had taken several baths last night and was too lazy to take another one. Liu Siyuan said, Tell me, which sister did you sleep with last night? Tian Mingchang followed up, Yes, Brother Yun, it's been 2 nights in a row. Yesterday you said you were going to buy some water, but you never came back, and you didn't even have supper with us. I don't believe you were kidnapped by your sister. Why? Yunqing waved her hand and said, No, it's my sister. Fuck. Hong Xiao was holding his phone and grinning. He raised his head when he heard this and said, Fuck, and then asked, Sophomore? Junior? Senior? Yunqing smiled mysteriously, Professor. I don't believe it. I don't believe it either. Although Yunqing's skill in picking up girls was unanimously recognized by everyone after last night, the senior sister might be right, but the professor was definitely talking nonsense. Yunqing was too lazy to explain and just changed his clothes. Seeing Hong Xiao picking up the phone again, he laughed foolishly. Yunqing casually asked, How is that girl from last night? Did you add her on WeChat? How was the chat? Hong Xiao said, We had a great conversation. Liu Siyuan said sourly, It's more than just a pleasant conversation. Lao Xiao now wishes he could grow a cell phone on his face. We talked until midnight last night, and when I woke up this morning I saw him grinning like an idiot. Tian Mingchang said, What a coincidence, that girl is also from our Chu University of Technology. She is from the same college as us, but not in the same department. Really? That would make things easier. Yunqing said, From now on, we will meet each other every day, and you don't have to worry about someone stealing your girl when you don't know. Hong Xiao chuckled, Thank you, Brother Yun. If you need anything from now on, just tell me what to do. I'll be at your service. The big guy patted his chest with sincerity. He liked that girl for 3 years in high school, but he kept his feelings hidden in his heart, which resulted in the girl not even knowing who he was after graduation. After some guidance from Yunqing, we added each other on WeChat and started chatting. From the 3 years of high school experience to the confusion of entering university, the two seemed to have endless topics to talk about. This feeling made him feel as if he was sinking into a honey pot. Just as Yunqing said. When fellow villagers meet, their eyes are filled with tears. The girl was very happy to meet her high school classmate on the university campus, and the two of them can now talk about almost anything. You should wait until you two are in a relationship before thanking me. Yun Qing said, when the time comes, just treat us to a meal in the dormitory. We will definitely charge you a lot of money. Hong Xiao waved his hand and said, steak is fine. I've even taught you English. He must be killed. That is. Tian Mingchang and Liu Siyuan responded. After chatting with the other party for a while, it seemed that the topic had ended. Hong Xiao put down his phone and saw that Yun Qing had changed into military training uniform. Hong Xiao paused and asked, Brother Yun, I have another question for you. I chat with her, but sometimes the topic gets stuck and I don't know how to respond to her. I feel weird sometimes. What should I do in this situation? Hearing this, Liu Siyuan and the other man who were changing into their military training uniforms also pricked up their ears. Yes. I have this problem too. Brother Yun, what do you say? Yun Qing smiled and said, girls are emotional animals, and they are influenced by emotions. It's better to bring some emotions every time you chat. Don't just state your reply, express your opinion, bring points that can resonate with her, and diverge your thinking. Don't reply too much each time, but the content of your reply should be able to follow up on her previous sentence and lead to the next sentence she can pick up. Liu Siyuan said, what the hell? Why does it seem a bit complicated? Tian Mingchang nodded, it's more complicated than doing the test. So? Yun Qing paused and said, it's tiring to chat with girls. I don't like chatting with girls, so I just don't add them. Thinking of those girls who asked Yun Qing for WeChat. Last night, many people in the work group found out that they shared a dormitory with Yun Qing, and they tried various ways to ask them for Yun Qing's contact information. As for why not adding from the class group, Yun Qing rejected everyone. Yun Qing talked about the trouble of being tired of chatting, which Liu Siyuan and others really wanted to experience, but they were not even qualified to have such trouble. Hong Xiao nodded, not quite understanding, I think I understand. Oh, right. Yun Qing looked at Hong Xiao, thought for a moment and said, do you know how to quickly make a girl lose interest in you? Hong Xiao is a big guy and seems to know nothing about love. Yun Qing feels that he needs to give him some proper guidance. Otherwise, it would be easy for my sister to make a fool of me. What do you mean? Yun Qing said, be nice to her without any bottom line, tell her everything about you, put all the chips you can bring in front of her, be open-hearted, tell her everything you think, and she will immediately lose interest in you. Why is that? Hong Xiao was puzzled and asked, I'm sincere to her and treat her well, but she still doesn't like me. Young boys are always full of infinite longing and fantasy about love. Their understanding of love comes more from TV dramas, film and television works, and imagination. They believe that love should be pure and flawless without being mixed with anything else. Pure love is the ultimate truth in the world. Liu Siyuan and Tian Mingchang also pricked up their ears. It's like being at a negotiating table. Yun Qing said, if one party knows the bottom line of the other party, then they can manipulate the other party at will and put forward many conditions that the other party cannot accept, and the other party can only let you do whatever you want. The same is true for love. If you tell her everything about yourself, she will be able to see through you at a glance, and she will lose her desire to conquer you. For various reasons, she may not break up with you for the time being, but she will test your bottom line little by little. You keep lowering your bottom line because you like her, and in the end you will become a clown, and she will look for her next conquest. So, don't tell her everything, keep it mysterious. The three people fell silent after hearing this. This seems to be different from the love they have always understood. Shouldn't love be sweet and dreamy? Why does it seem like there's gambling and calculation everywhere? Having said that, Yun Qing is about the same age as them. From what he described, he had never had a girlfriend before college. Where did he get all these rich theories? It sounds a bit weird, but somehow it makes sense. Seeing the three people thinking seriously, Yun Qing looked at the time, stood up and said, okay, take your time to feel it, the time is almost up, let's go, don't be late. Let's go. Lao Xiao, stop looking at your phone. Didn't you hear what my brother Yun said? Keep it a secret and don't reply to someone's message immediately. Here I come. Hey brother Yun, why do you look a little off? My sister didn't let me go to bed last night. I guess I caught a cold. What the hell? Which woman is so bold as to not let brother Yun get into bed with her? I'll help you deal with her. Heh, she's almost done with you. Chapter 15 Yun Qing is sick. Windy and rainy playground. The wind and rain playground is located in the living area not far from the boys' dormitory building. It is where the freshmen of the School of Chemical Engineering receive their military training. Yunqing and 3 roommates came to the playground. After looking around, I found the location of Class 1 of Applied Chemistry. Liu Yao had not arrived yet, and the 2 acting class teachers were talking. A boy and a girl, both sophomores. After the class meeting last night, Yunqing knew the names of the 2 people. The boy was Xu Mingqi and the girl was Chu Yujie. They were repeating the precautions of military training. Wait until 8 o'clock. The military training instructor appeared on the playground. After the whole row was broken up, Yunqing was assigned to the second formation. Then the military training began, standing at attention, marching in step, and standing at ease. After all, Qing University of Science and Technology is a top university in the country. In addition to the most basic formation movements, there are also target shooting exercises, combat tactics training, ideological education, etc. Standing at attention is just the beginning. Yunqing has good physical fitness. After being reborn, he knows the importance of health. During the 3-month vacation, he takes time out every day to exercise. For him, a little military training is no problem. The premise is that he is not sick. As Yunqing stood at attention for longer periods of time, his face became paler and paler. Chen Mingchang, who shared the same dormitory with him, noticed that something was wrong with Yunqing and suggested that he report to the coach and go to the side to rest. But, it's impossible. Liu Yao hasn't arrived yet, and she hasn't seen him yet. She has to act out the whole play, there's no reason to give up halfway. How could she feel sorry for me if I didn't make myself look miserable? That woman is very hard-hearted. Yunqing continued to stand in the middle of the queue and gave Chen Mingchang a look, telling him not to be noticed by others and forcing him to rest, but he refused. Time passes by every second. 10 o'clock. The sun was high in the sky and the temperature began to rise. The playground was silent, with only the occasional shouts of the instructors. Sweat began to appear on the foreheads of the students standing at attention. Although all the students at Qing Institute of Technology are good students with excellent grades, many of them devoted themselves to study in high school and their physical fitness is really poor. They start to stagger when exposed to the sun. But the instructor had no intention of letting them rest. Side of the square. Xu Mingqi and Chu Yujie held umbrellas and looked at the students in the square formation. Everything was green. Xu Mingqi smiled and said, "It's 10 o'clock, and the sun is starting to shine. He, what do you think? Why don't we get some watermelons and let them watch us eat them?" Chu Yujie glanced at him and said, "You have a really evil mind. Give me half." "Okay." Xu Mingqi asked, "Where's Professor Liu? I haven't seen her for such a long time. She should come over to take a look, right? She hasn't come this morning." Chu Yujie said, "Professor Liu has an early class in the morning, at 10 o'clock, so the get out of class should be over soon, so he will come over." TSK. She smacked her lips and said, "I heard that Professor Liu is still angry today. Instead, she is even more angry. Just now, they sent me a message saying that she couldn't stop crying because she was scolded. She also asked who had offended Professor Liu." Xu Mingqi was thankful. Fortunately, her class will start the day after tomorrow. Chu Yujie pursed her lips, feeling a little uncomfortable. She had a class with Professor Liu at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and she secretly prayed that Liu Yao would be in a better mood by then. Turning around, she looked at the students who were undergoing military training. It turns out that military training is the time that tests your appearance the most. Chu Yujie looked in a certain direction and said, "Normally everyone wears casual clothes and the difference is not so obvious. Now everyone wears the same clothes, and you can tell who is more beautiful at a glance." Xu Mingqi also looked at a certain location and agreed with it. "Why?" Chu Yujie bumped Xu Mingqi's arm and raised an eyebrow. "Do you think Yunqing in our class is very handsome? They are both standing at attention, but I just like him no matter how I look at him. He looks better there when he does the same action." Boys rarely comment on whether other boys are handsome or not. If they say a boy is handsome, it means they really think he is handsome. Oftentimes, what boys think of as handsome is different from what girls think of as handsome. Girls usually like idols with slicked back hair, Korean-style looks, and those who do actions that seem disgusting to boys. Boys are very disgusted by this kind of thing. But at this moment, the two of them found the same definition of handsomeness in Yunqing. Shumenchi nodded and said, "He is indeed very handsome. Although every movement of that guy seems very casual, he has a kind of unrestrainedness that is hard to describe. Someone in my class knew that he was a student in my class and even asked me for his WeChat ID." Chu Yujie's eyes lit up. "Do you have his WeChat? Send it to me." "How can I have that? They are all in the same group, just add him yourself." Chu Yujie said sadly, "He rejected all friend requests, so I couldn't add him. I thought you had his WeChat account." "I don't have any. Just ask during the break. Ask quickly. She also wants to have Yunqing's WeChat." Hearing this, Shumenchi looked towards the position of the second formation, found Yunqing, stared at him for a few seconds, and thought about going over to talk to him later. Just then the instructor shouted, "Turn left." Shumenchi frowned and said, "Why is Yunqing so pale? He looks very strange. Is he sick?" Chu Yujie also noticed it and said quickly, "Why don't you let him come over to rest? He is indeed a little too pale. Don't let him faint later. Yunqing is really something. He insists on training even when he is sick. He really doesn't know how to take care of his body. I feel sorry for my brother." I was thinking about going up to the instructor to say something when he called for a break, when I suddenly heard the tapping of high heels behind me. Lu Yao, who had just finished class, came here to see the training of the freshmen. Walked to Shumenchi and Chu Yujie. Lu Yao's voice was cold. "How is the military training going?" Shumenchi nodded. "Everything is normal, there is no problem, but classmate Yunqing seems to be sick and is not in a good condition. We need to let him come over and rest for a while." "Yunqing? Sick?" Lu Yao frowned slightly and looked towards the square where Yunqing was. Sure enough, Yunqing's face looked extremely ugly and pale at this moment. Although he was still following the cue, his weakness was obvious. Thinking about how he took care of me all night last night. He drank in the middle of the night and had to wake up every 2 hours to help her to the bathroom to vomit. He didn't sleep well the whole night. When he woke up, he was still lying on the edge of the bed without a quilt. It was normal to have a cold and a fever. Lu Yao remembered that in the morning, she saw Yunqing's face looked strange. When I asked him at that time, he said that he didn't sleep well. Now it seems that it was not just that, he was already sick at that time. This guy. I had to go to military training even though I was sick, and I was exposed to the sun for 2 hours. Doesn't he know he should rest? Lu Yao felt a little angry and a little guilty. After all, the other party ended up in this state because of taking care of her. When the instructor turned around, Lu Yao raised his hand at him. The entire square stopped to rest. Lu Yao walked closer. "Yunqing, come out." "What's wrong, Professor Lu?" "Come with me." Yunqing said, "I still have military training to do." "Just leave if you're told to. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Chapter 16. It is recommended to go to the hospital for examination. Facing everyone's gaze, Yunqing walked out of the line and followed Lu Yao to the edge of the playground. The classmates around were a little curious when they saw Yunqing's pale face, but they immediately realized that Yunqing was sick. "I'm so envious. We are all working so hard here, sweat is pouring down like rain. My friend, you got sick when the sun was at its brightest. Your timing was perfect." In the square formation, Qian Mingcharn adjusted his glasses. As expected of Brother Yun. "I was just wondering why he didn't let me file a report. Is he waiting for Professor Lu here?" Qian Mingcharn said with admiration. Brother Yun is very thoughtful. He knew that he could only take a break after writing the report, and he wanted to let Professor Lu see that he could take a day off. I was too shallow. The students glanced at it twice and then quickly looked away. Just because, after a short break, the instructor asked them to stand up again and start the next part of training, marching. As the sun grew hotter, they became more envious of Yunqing. It's nice to be sick. The drill room is in the living area, and the school clinic is also in the living area. Yunqing, who had separated from the main group, followed Lu Yao and walked towards the school infirmary. His eyes fell on Lu Yao's neatly tied short hair. Yunqing chuckled and said, "Sister doesn't look that hard-hearted." Lu Yao didn't look at him, and said with a cold voice, "At school, it's my job title." "Okay, sister." Lu Yao moved his lips, but didn't scold him because he was a patient. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Qing said, I thought it wasn't that serious, I just needed to rest. It's not that serious now, I just feel a little dizzy. Lu Yao turned around and glared at him, your face is so pale, it's not serious? What, you want to lie on the ground to be serious? Qing said calmly, just lie down and talk later. You feel more guilty lying down, and I want better results. Snort. Lu Yao snorted, as if angry that he was ruining his body, and said, you don't have to do military training today. I'll ask for leave for you. I'll take you to the school clinic later to see if you need for drip. Just one day. Just a visit to the school clinic. Just for drip? Not enough. It's not enough. If it were that simple, wouldn't it be a waste of the several cold showers I took at night? The effect is far from what Qing wants to achieve, and the input and output are not proportional. The school clinic is not far from Fengkao. Walked for a few minutes. Lu Yao walked into a low building, pushed open the door, and was greeted by the strong smell of disinfectant. There are 2 school doctors in the school clinic. Hey, Professor Lu. The school doctor stood up and looked at Qing behind Lu Yao, noticing that he was still wearing his military training uniform and there was sweat on his forehead. Lu Yao said, please check on him. The school doctor looked at Qing and said, you look really bad. You should rest when you are sick. You even stood in the sun for 2 hours. Lu Yao said, from this morning till now. Pulling him to sit on the sofa nearby, the school doctor brought a thermometer and asked Qing to hold it under his armpit to observe his condition. You really don't know how to take care of your body. The school doctor asked, how do you feel now? Are you dizzy or have any discomfort? This is exactly what I want. Rubbing his forehead and pretending to be weak, Qing began to talk nonsense. I feel dizzy, my mouth is dry, my throat is itchy, and I occasionally feel a little breathless, my hands are weak, and my chest is a little stuffy. Oh, by the way, doctor, I still have insomnia at night. When I fall asleep, I have nightmares. The dreams are always intermittent. Recently, I seem to have stomach problems. I always feel that I have no appetite for food, and my heartbeat is very fast from time to time. Hearing this, Lu Yao and the school doctor frowned at the same time. So many symptoms. Lu Yao's lips moved as he said, didn't you just say that it was nothing serious, and lying on the ground was not a big deal? Qing, I pretended to be strong. Lu Yao. School doctor. I took out the thermometer from Qing's armpit and took a look. It was 38 degrees. He is indeed sick, and it looks like a common cold and fever, but after hearing Qing's description, the school doctor is a little unsure. If there is really something wrong, don't delay treatment. He looked at Lu Yao and said, the conditions in our school clinic are limited, and we can't conduct a comprehensive examination. With Qing's symptoms, I suggest you go to an off-campus hospital for a detailed examination. Military training may have to be suspended for the time being. Hearing this, Lu Yao looked at Qing, his face still pale. Thinking that there will be no classes in the coming time, and that Qing fell ill because of taking care of me, I must not let his condition get worse. Although after waking up and thinking about what happened last night, Lu Yao was a little reluctant to get along with Qing. Whenever I think of him coaxing me in the tone of a kindergarten teacher, I feel weird. She wanted to distance herself from Qing. But, now the body is important. After thanking the doctor, Lu Yao asked Qing to stand up. In this case, I will take you to the hospital to see what your symptoms are. If the situation is serious, I may have to contact your family to come over. Qing did not comment and slowly stood up. However, when he was about to stand up, his body suddenly tilted. Seeing this, Lu Yao hurried over to support him and prevent him from falling. Seeing this, the school doctor said, he is sick and has been in the sun for 2 hours. His body is very weak. Professor Lu may have to suffer. Qing silently gave a thumbs up to the school doctor. When my 3 rebellious sons fall ill in the future, I will ask them to come to you to boost sales. Even if they have nothing to do, they must come and buy 2 bottles of honeysuckle dew. You are so sensible. Walk out of the school clinic. Qing's arm was resting on Lu Yao's shoulders, softly. The faint fragrance from her body penetrated into his nostrils, and a look of comfort flashed in Qing's eyes. This was the only real physical contact between the two of them, except when they were drunk and lying in bed yesterday morning. Qing enjoyed it very much. Helping him walk towards the parking lot. Qing pretended to be weak and said, "Thank you, sister." Unable to see the expression on her face, Lu Yao couldn't tell the emotion in her voice. "Why do I feel like you did it on purpose? Then sister can let me go." Lu Yao loosened his grip slightly and saw that Qing was about to lie down. "Lu Yao. And you said you didn't mean it?" Qing said, "If it will cause my sister to misunderstand, I'd better walk by myself." "It's okay. I've been standing for 2 hours. These 2 steps are nothing." "Lu Yao. Why do I suddenly smell tea?" Seeing that Qing was about to push her away and leave, Lu Yao suddenly felt guilty. The doctor said that he was very weak now, and it seemed that he had misunderstood him. She quickly reached out, grabbed his hand on her shoulder with one hand, and supported his waist with the other hand, holding him in place to prevent him from moving. "Don't move, I'll help you walk. I'd better go on my own. If you keep talking, I'll push you into the gutter, and I won't even look at you if you die in there. Sister, you're tough on the outside but you're soft on the inside. I can tell. Lu Yao. How can this person be so shameless?" Chapter 17 Hospitalization is recommended. Walk all the way from the school clinic to the parking lot. Some students saw Lu Yao on the road and were surprised that Professor Lu was walking with a male classmate, and the two were supporting each other. Professor Lu's hand is still on his waist. But when he saw Qing's pale face and the military training uniform he was wearing, he immediately realized that he was sick. Professor Lu is taking care of a patient. But I'm still so envious. I also want to be sick. I also want Professor Lu to support me as I walk, and I also want Professor Lu to put his hand on my waist. Although I might be scolded by Professor Lu. But I do. The eyes of the students passing by looked at Qing with envy that he could be with Professor Lu, but also with sympathy that he might be in trouble from Professor Lu later. Professor Lu had never been so close to that boy in all his years at the school. Walking all the way from the school infirmary to the parking lot and stuffing Qing into the passenger seat, Lu Yao's expression looked a little unnatural. It was also her first time to have such close contact with a boy. Of course, the distance might have been closer yesterday morning, when she was not quite sober, but now she was as awake as ever. As if to deliberately cover up the unnaturalness. After getting in the car, Lu Yao started the car and didn't talk to Qing on the way. Qing understood Lu Yao's thoughts and didn't take the initiative to find a topic. Relax in moderation. There is a hospital near the Science City, which is closest to Shooting Institute of Technology. Lu Yao is more familiar with that place, so he doesn't even need to turn on the navigation and goes straight to the hospital. Less than 10 minutes. Qing and Lu Yao entered the outpatient clinic, registered, and after waiting in line for a while, they met the doctor in the outpatient clinic. The doctor was a middle-aged man, and he adjusted his glasses. "What are the symptoms?" Qing said, "Doctor, I feel a little dizzy, my mouth is dry, my throat is itchy, my heartbeat is a little fast, I seem to have a fever, I have phlegm, I have tinnitus from time to time, and my head seems to be buzzing. I feel very uncomfortable." Hearing this, the doctor frowned and stared at Qing. Lu Yao looked at Qing, recalled what he said in the school clinic, and asked, "Why are your symptoms different both times?" "Qing, maybe I didn't feel it just now. I forgot what I just said. What can I say? I can only talk about the random problems that I can think of." Lu Yao did not pursue the matter further, but looked at the doctor and asked, "Doctor, what's the matter with him?" The doctor pondered, looked at Qing, and then looked at Lu Yao. His situation. He was about to continue speaking when Lu Yao's cell phone rang. She gestured to go outside to answer the call. The moment she walked out of the emergency room door, Qing perked up instantly. He slid forward on the swivel chair he was sitting on, got close to the doctor, and said in a low voice, "Doctor, I had a fight with my girlfriend, and she won't forgive me now. Please make my symptoms sound more serious, the more serious the better, so that she will feel sorry for me. Please." The doctor understood clearly. "I was wondering, you just look like you have a cold, how come you have so many confusing symptoms?" Qing did not hide it, "Our happy life depends on you." The doctor looked at Qing's military training uniform and said, "You should still be a college student, right? That girl looks much older than you." Qing retorted, "What era are you in? You're still engaging in age discrimination." Okay. The doctor seemed to have had similar experiences and said, "Every family has its own problems. I'll help you explain them later. Thank you. Next time I'll get someone to help you boost your sales. The doctor's expression changed. Don't repay kindness with enmity. I finally got some rest. There were footsteps at the door. Qing quickly made an okay gesture to the doctor, and then instantly entered into the role, with a half-dead expression on his face, which made the doctor's mouth twitch. If he had such acting skills, there would be no need to worry about disharmony in the married life. Hang up the phone. Lu Yao returned to the emergency room, glanced at Qing, and asked, "Doctor, what are his symptoms?" It seemed as if he was infected by Qing's acting skills. The doctor took a deep breath and immersed himself in the role. He said in a heavy tone, "I recommend hospitalization for his condition." Cough, cough, cough. Qing coughed violently. No. If I tell you to say that the condition is serious, don't say that. If you want to be hospitalized, you might as well stay in the school infirmary. At least Professor Lu is still in school. If she really leaves me here and asks me to stay in the hospital, I won't pay for your hospital bills. Lu Yao frowned. Hospitalization? So serious? The doctor glanced at Qing from the corner of his eye. He understood his hint and said thoughtfully, "The best advice is to stay in the hospital for observation for a period of time, but he can also go home and rest while at home." He struggled with the words in his mind. His condition is quite serious. He caught a cold at night. He also had a fever and was exposed to the sun for 2 hours during military training. No wonder, this made his condition worse. It is very likely that this minor cold will turn into pneumonia. You family members should pay attention to this. Pneumonia. Lu Yao had never had this disease and had no idea what it was, but the doctor's diagnosis seemed very serious and she became a little nervous. She looked at Qing and said, "You look like this, maybe we should call your parents and ask them to come and take you home." No, Professor Lu. Qing stopped him immediately and said, "If you ask my family to send me home, what's the difference between that and asking me to be hospitalized for treatment?" No. The situation is worse than hospitalization. When you are in the hospital, at least you can come to see me occasionally. But if you go home, you really can't even see me. Qing was heartbroken. My family has had a very difficult life in order to send me to this university. I don't want them to worry. It's only been 2 days since the start of school. If my parents knew. He didn't say anything else, but his pain was evident. The doctor's mouth twitched even more violently. He understood the relationship between the two. They seem to be teacher and student, right? Good boy. Others can brag about flirting with a senior student for a long time, but you want to flirt with a professor? After hearing this, Lu Yao seemed to understand Qing's difficulties, but she didn't know what to do in the current situation. She has never worked as a counselor, she just helped out temporarily. I never thought about this happening. Fortunately, the doctor spoke in time. His condition is neither serious nor not serious. The most important thing is to get enough rest, keep the room ventilated, and keep a good mood. Observe for 2 days and come back for a checkup. As long as there is no deterioration, there will be no problem. Lu Yao thought about it and said hesitantly, "Then I'll take you back to the dormitory." Ahem. Qing coughed lightly. The doctor continued, "The dormitory environment is not recommended. After all, there are too many people living there, and they may not pay attention to hygiene, which is not conducive to recovery. I still recommend that you observe at home." Bright eyes circulated on the doctor and Qing. The doctor didn't seem to be lying. After all, Qing's illness was caused by herself, so she couldn't just leave it alone. Can't go back to the dormitory. Lu Yao gritted his teeth and said, "Then you can stay at my house for 2 days. Qing was a little embarrassed. Wouldn't that be inappropriate? The doctor's mouth was about to twitch. You little bastard, after all this talk, isn't this what you've been waiting for? You are being modest now, aren't you? Chapter 18 Professor Lu lets the wolf in. The final result is still in for drip. The difference is that after the cooperation of Qing and the doctor, Qing will take a week off after the drip, and will spend this week at Lu Yao's home. When leaving the emergency room, Qing silently gave the doctor a thumbs up. If I could catch up with Professor Lu. You will definitely receive a big red envelope on my wedding day. The doctor simply gave him a look of admiration. After all, it was a little unbelievable for a freshman to pursue a professor. Wish him good luck. Infusion room. Logically speaking, Qing's symptoms don't even require an 4. He is in good physical condition. He can just go back to sleep and sweat a little, and he will be fine in 2 hours. But since the doctor has said there is a tendency towards pneumonia, we have to play the full role. He simply got an injection. Leaning on the cold medical chair in the hospital, the pungent smell of disinfectant filled the air. Qing turned his head to glance at Lu Yao. She didn't leave, but stayed with him while he was getting the infusion. There was a look of confusion on her face. Qing noticed that Lu Yao took out his cell phone from his bag and tapped it with his fingers, as if searching for something, which should be something like pneumonia. She didn't understand the problem and wanted to see how serious it was. The result is obvious. Doctors are professionals and the excuses they make are similar to their current illnesses: headache, cold, and runny nose. The clinical manifestations are exactly the same as those of pneumonia. Seeing the result on her phone, Lu Yao took a deep breath. Puzzled, she looked at Qing and asked, "That doctor didn't do any tests, just looked at you, and he was able to determine that you have pneumonia?" Ahem. After all, we are doing scientific research, so we have to be rigorous. Qing also made a blank expression and said hesitantly, "I don't know, maybe he has seen too many patients and is very experienced. I just heard the doctor say that he has been doing this for more than 30 years. He added, "Isn't it just about looking, smelling, asking and feeling when treating a patient?" Lu Yao said, "But I think he is only in his early 40s. Qing. I'm still not rigorous enough." Lu Yao didn't bother about this issue. Although she didn't know how the situation turned out to be that Qing had to move to her house, since she had already agreed, she still talked about it. Lu Yao asked, "Do you need me to take you to school to get your clothes for the next 2 days? You need to take off your military training uniform." Qing shook his head and said, "Forget about that. I don't have many clothes in my dormitory. I just want to buy 2 new clothes for the new semester. There is a shopping mall nearby. I will go to the mall and buy 2 tomorrow." The round trip was not far, but Qing did not want to go through the trouble, especially since he had just told them this morning that he had slept at the professor's house last night. They clearly felt they were bullshitting. But if Professor Lu follows us to the dormitory later, things will be different. The nonsense we talked about might become a fact. Even though it is true. However, Qing didn't want those rebellious sons to know about his relationship with Lu Yao, which was not a good thing for Lu Yao either. Lu Yao just nodded, "You decide." The drip lasted for an hour and a half, and it was already 12 o'clock when it was finished. His body could feel strength returning, but when the doctor pulled out the needle and Qing stood up, he was still shaky. Lu Yao had no choice but to continue supporting him. She still felt that Qing was pretending. An 18-year-old boy should be full of energy, so how could he be so weak? But then she thought, he didn't even feel tired last night, he was running around, and she just supported him for a while, it was no big deal. Lu Yao immediately felt relieved. The hospital is not far from Daoran Garden. Walk to the parking lot, get in the car, and drive back to the underground parking lot in 2 minutes. Take the elevator to the 12th floor. Standing at the door and looking at the house number, Qing's expression was a little complicated. At least when he came here yesterday, he definitely didn't think that he would step into this door again. He just wanted to send Lu Yao home and then leave. Only. Feeling the extremely clear beating of his heart at this moment, Qing looked at Lu Yao's back as he opened the door. His purple shirt and neat short hair were particularly eye-catching. "Professor Lu. You have let the wolf in. I am a person who will achieve my goal once I make up my mind. You should be prepared to add your name to my family's household register." Click. The door opened, Lu Yao didn't look back, and Qing followed him into the house. Looking at the familiar room, Lu Yao subconsciously thought of everything that happened last night. She stood at the door and shouted welcome. She led him and introduced everything about the house. A string in her heart was quietly plucked. Lu Yao didn't show any extra expression on his face. When he saw Qing come in, he was familiar with the house anyway, so he let him sit wherever he wanted. Lu Yao said, "The school's morning military training should be over, but I still have to go back to take a look and get some food. What do you want to eat?" Qing sat on the sofa and raised his head. "I eat whatever you eat." Lu Yao turned around and went back to the bedroom. After a moment, she handed a tablet to Qing and said, "TV, tablet, find something to do, I'll be back later." After thinking for a while, Lu Yao stared at him with a serious face. Don't enter my room, not the master bedroom or the second bedroom. Yun Qing smiled and said, Okay, sister, I'll listen to you. He really is like a good and obedient little brother. Lu Yao's lips moved slightly. In the end, he didn't say anything, picked up the car keys, and went out, leaving Yun Qing alone in the room. Yun Qing chuckled. Haven't you seen all that you should see? Why don't you introduce them to me? I still prefer someone to take me to know them. Oh yeah. I was drunk last night and have a blackout. When Professor Lu comes back later, I will have to emphasize this point to her. Some things are Professor Lu's restricted area, and he cannot enter them casually. I want to see Professor Lu's charming look again from last night. He has to work hard. Standing up from the sofa, Yun Qing looked at everything in the house. After all, it was a little dark last night and Lu Yao was drunk, so he had to watch it. He had only seen the house in general. At a glance, there are dining table, sofa, coffee table, kitchen and balcony. Lu Yao was dressed very exquisitely. Just like she said, her home is very beautiful and was built with great care, which can be seen in many details. However, in Yun Qing's opinion, the house still lacks a bit of worldly atmosphere. Then I thought that Lu Yao had been single for many years, and because of her work, she must have little time to stay at home, and most of the time she was at school, which was understandable. The thought of fireworks flashed through Yun Qing's mind. He thought about the hangover soup he cooked last night. The kitchen had not had time to deal with it after it was cooked. It was unlikely that Professor Lu would enter the kitchen. He turned and went into the kitchen to clean up the mess from last night. After washing the pots and pans, Yun Qing opened the door under the cabinet. The things in the cabinet made him suddenly stunned and he chuckled. For someone who never cooks, there are so many pots and pans. There are 3 types of cooking pots alone. Yun Qing put all the things in. Professor Lu's Strange Collecting Habit +1. Chapter 19 Too Lazy to Justify. Lu Yao came back half an hour later. She was holding 2 boxes of lunch in her hands. She usually ate at school, but today there was one more person at home, so she packed some for her family. Change your shoes and walk into the living room. Lu Yao saw that Yun Qing was sitting lazily on the carpet, with his back against the sofa, holding the tablet with his elbows, and holding a writing pen in his right hand, writing something seriously. It seemed that he was drawing. Sister, you're back. Hearing the noise, Yun Qing raised his head and smiled brightly. Lu Yao put the key aside, hummed softly, and went into the restaurant next door. He put 2 meals on the table and said, Come and eat. Okay. Putting down what he was doing, Yun Qing sat down opposite her. Lu Yao bought 2 steaks. Shooting University of Science and Technology pays great attention to the healthy diet of students. The steaks are not as rough as they look outside and taste very good. During the meal, neither of them spoke much. Yun Qing didn't say anything, so Lu Yao naturally had nothing to talk about with him. On the contrary, she felt very strange because there was suddenly one more person in the house. It's hard to describe how strange it is. Lu Yao didn't have the habit of taking a nap. After finishing her meal, she packed up the lunchbox and threw it into the trash can. She sat down on the sofa and turned on the TV. The midday news was about to end. Yun Qing returned to his previous seat and sat down to continue the unfinished work. Occasionally Lu Yao would glance at him. He seemed to be drawing, and his drawings looked pretty good. Could this kid also draw? Lu Yao asked, Can you draw? Yun Qing didn't look up, his hands kept moving, and he said, I liked painting when I was a child, but later I stopped painting for various reasons. After the college entrance examination, I felt I had nothing to do during the summer vacation, so I picked it up again. She nodded slightly and didn't ask any further questions. But she noticed that Yun Qing suddenly reached out and took the phone beside him, seemed to open some website, and then handed the screen to her. Sister, you can take a look and make appropriate comments. Not interested. Yun Qing smiled, just put the phone next to her, with the screen on, and turned back to painting. The midday news ended quickly and entered the boring commercial break. Normally, she would be the only one at home at this time. She would usually lie on the sofa and check her phone and online news to kill time. But now with Yun Qing here, it's not easy to lie still. The screen of the mobile phone next to the sofa was always on. Lu Yao finally took it and read the content. It was a comic serialized by Yun Qing on a comic website. The style of painting is similar to that in the tablet at this time. Be reasonable. Yunqing's painting is pretty good. But when Liu Yao thought of this guy shouting something like, "Look at the teacher with big eyes and close your small mouth," he couldn't help but grit his teeth, and his words of praise became different. "It's an ugly painting." Yunqing just chuckled and said nothing. The living room became quiet after that. Neither of them communicated with each other. One was drawing on a tablet, and the other was looking at paintings on his phone. The comic is about suspense and crime solving. If we only compare the painting skills, Yunqing's skills are not up to par compared with the top painters, but his advantage is that the story is very attractive. The rich experience of his 35 years in his previous life allows him to weave a colorful story easily. In the first chapter of the comic, Yunqing dug a big hole, which aroused everyone's curiosity about the result. And there are pitfalls in every subsequent chapter. Curiosity turns into anticipation. In addition, the selection of materials includes elements such as ghosts and myths, which seems to present a three-dimensional fantasy world to everyone. Therefore, anyone who has watched the first episode was attracted to it. The comics are quite famous on their website. But it has been nearly 3 months since the comics began, and Yunqing's update frequency is shockingly low. Sometimes he updates 1 chapter a week, and sometimes he updates 1 chapter every 2 weeks. It is simply slow. Some readers urged for updates in the comment section, saying how can you make money if you don't update frequently? Yunqing's reply also made the readers feel distressed. I don't think highly of these trifles. What about your dream? Dreams lie flat. What do you do when you're not painting? Collection of materials. I collect materials every day, but they are not updated. When Liu Yao saw Yunqing's occasional replies, she couldn't help but twitch her lips. His mentality really made her a little speechless. I finished reading a dozen chapters very quickly. Before this, Liu Yao had never read comics, but in the past 10 minutes or so, she was obviously attracted by the story. It must be said that Yunqing's story was very attractive, and she was no exception. There were too many traps dug, and she also wanted to know what the next episode would contain. How's it going, sister? Is my drawing okay? Yunqing noticed Liu Yao putting down his phone from the corner of his eye and asked casually. Liu Yao didn't say anything but just reached out to the tablet. Okay. This is the best answer. Yunqing smiled and handed the tablet to Liu Yao. He drew very quickly, or rather very roughly, because he was too lazy to retouch it. The new chapter was almost finished. Liu Yao read the entire content in silence. So who is the final murderer? I haven't thought about it yet. Liu Yao was puzzled. This is a suspense theme. Don't you think about the ending before you draw it? Don't you have an outline or something? Yunqing said as a matter of course, and that thing? That's too much effort. I usually only know the plot 5 minutes before drawing. Liu Yao. She suddenly didn't know what to say. Although I am reluctant to admit it. But Yunqing's comic called Alien Spirits is indeed very attractive, as can be seen from the large number of requests for updates in the comment section. Liu Yao thought about how many students who graduated from shooting polytechnic every year would not work in the major he studied, but instead go into various industries. It would be good if Yunqing's comics could become a survival skill in the future. Liu Yao said, your painting skills can be fully explored. If you update diligently every day, you can earn a living. I know you want to say that you don't care about those little things, but it's also money, right? Maybe it can become a means of making a living for you in the future. Sister, do you want to see it? I want to know how to fill the hole you dug, but Liu Yao won't admit it. I don't want to. Yunqing curled her lips. Then why should I update? It's a waste of time. So what do you do with your time? Waste. Liu Yao was a little speechless. She has never come into contact with people like Yunqing since she was a child, so how should she describe his mentality? I'm too lazy to feel justified. Then I thought that everyone has their own lifestyle, and this is probably Yunqing's lifestyle. Although it was different from her own, she accepted it. Liu Yao handed the tablet back to Yunqing and asked him to continue drawing, while she turned and went into the bedroom. Looking at her back, Yunqing's eyes deepened. My sister didn't ask me to work hard. The comic has entered the final stage. He finished it quickly and uploaded the new chapter. After using his brain for a while, he suddenly felt indescribably tired. Yunqing was lazy and was just about to sit on the sofa and lie down for a while. Click. The bedroom door opened and Liu Yao came out with a test paper in his hand. Chapter 20 Chemistry Test Paper. Qing thought she was holding some information or documents and didn't pay much attention to it. It was not until Liu Yao walked up to him and handed him the paper that he saw clearly what it was and his face suddenly changed. Liu Yao looked at him and said, "I can't judge your mentality, but since you have chosen the School of Chemical Engineering and Applied Chemistry, you should adopt a corresponding attitude in studying this major." Qing suddenly had a bad feeling. As expected. Liu Yao continued, "This paper is a test paper I plan to give to your class after the start of the semester. I want to know your general level and whether you have mastered the knowledge well, so that I can know how to carry out my course. I don't have anything to do this afternoon, so just do this test. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me directly. I'll be here until 5 o'clock. This time it was Qing's turn to be silent. It is indeed as Liu Yao said, since he has chosen the major of applied chemistry, he should indeed have a basic understanding of this major. This has nothing to do with mentality or effort. It is the basic condition that he must have as a student of this major. It's like as a businessman, if he doesn't understand the basic operation of the economy, can he be called a businessman? A student from the School of Chemical Engineering who can't even understand the periodic table can be called a student of the School of Chemical Engineering. Qing's original idea was to learn slowly after school started. Although he couldn't understand those things, as long as he read more, he would eventually understand them. He didn't expect to gain anything from this major. Keep a calm mind and just pass the exam. But he never expected that Liu Yao would give him a chemistry test paper at this time to test his level. Level? Do I have any level? Nominally, I am a student who just graduated from high school 3 months ago, but the problem is that my soul is still 35 years old. Those things are more than 10 years away from me. I lost it somewhere a long time ago. Qing lowered his head and looked at the strange characters on the paper. His expression became more and more serious, as if he was facing a great enemy. What is Co? What is AGNO3? Why does one string of letters plus another string of letters equal another string of letters? What does the triangle above the equal sign represent? Just the first multiple choice question made him feel overwhelmed and couldn't understand it. Qing couldn't understand any of them. When Qing heard Liu Yao say that she could ask her if she didn't understand something, her rosy face suddenly turned pale. "Professor Liu, I don't understand any of this." But this cannot be said. He knew that Liu Yao was very serious about her profession and teaching. This was her job and she would devote her whole heart to it. He should support and respect Liu Yao's work and, as her student, not be perfunctory. Qing could only nod his head very heavily. Liu Yao was not at all surprised by his sudden serious state, because she had seen this reaction too many times. Not to mention Qing, even the sophomores and juniors had the same expression as him when they saw the test papers. However, compared to those, Qing's paper was much simpler, and she believed that Qing should be able to do it. Isn't it only 3 months since the college entrance examination? The test paper was not difficult for him. Liu Yao said, "The test paper is not very difficult. You can finish it with some time. I will come over to correct it for you later. You can take your time first." Qing nodded heavily. Then, he watched Liu Yao turn around and walk into the second bedroom. Qing had no time to think about why Liu Yao went to the second bedroom at this time. All his attention was now on the paper in front of him. The brain, which had been tired from thinking about the plot for a few minutes, became active the moment Liu Yao closed the door, and the brain cells started working frantically. What to do? What should I do now? How should I answer this test? How should I cope with it? How should I produce an answer that will make Professor Liu feel that I am talented but also need improvement? What a talent! I still want to control the points. Now I should think about how to avoid handing in a blank paper. So what exactly is Co? What to do? What to do? Qing's brain was working at high speed, even faster than last night. Suddenly he noticed the mobile phone thrown aside, and the moment he saw the phone, his brain stopped working. He figured out a solution. Cheating. There is no way out except cheating. If you let him think about it, even if you give him a whole day, he still won't be able to understand why one string of letters plus another string of letters can equal another string of letters. There are numbers inside the letters. A certain degree. No, I typed too slowly. I finished answering a question, but Professor Liu came out before I finished copying it. What are those little programs for doing homework? Not under. He is not skilled in using it. Classmates? Since they applied for this major, they knew something about it, and their academic performance was pretty good, so at least they wouldn't let themselves hand in a blank paper. But the problem is that they are in military training. Yunqingjia's classmates only live in the dormitory. Even if the instructor asked them to rest now, he was sick and he left with Lu Yao. Where did he get the chemistry test paper? He didn't want anyone to know about his connection with Professor Lu for the time being. Who to ask? Damn it. Why didn't I add 2 sophomores and juniors? I would have gotten the answers by asking them, as they would have been free. But the problem is that I didn't add any. Who could have imagined this? Who would have thought that Professor Lu would hand him a chemistry test paper for no reason? Yunqing quickly flipped through the friends in his phone, but couldn't find anyone who could give him a definite answer. What to do? What to do? If Professor Lu saw me cheating and I couldn't find the correct answer, that would be a big problem. Have no choice. Yunqing could only try his luck. Take photos and send questions to their phones one by one in the order of their friends' list. Uncle, can you help me figure out how to do this? Sister, do you know how to do this? Lao Li, check the answer to this question. Mr. Chen, please ask our chemistry teacher on WeChat for me. Dad, look at what this is. Old Wang, what's the answer to this question? From junior high school classmates to high school classmates, from family relatives to VX friends added through various channels, Yunqing asked them all. He felt that at this moment, his concentration on sending messages was 100 times higher than his concentration on painting. Friends responded quickly. Uncle, you little brat, aren't you in military training? Are you still doing questions? What, did the instructor ask you to do a test? Sister, brother, I'm only in the 6th grade. These questions are a bit beyond the syllabus. They are too difficult for me. Lao Li, huh? You didn't have military training? I'm in military training now. Teacher Chen, Yunqing? How is your college life? Isn't it more interesting than high school? Your chemistry teacher is teaching now. Dad, you little brat, I sent you to school, not for you to come back and take my exam. What's so great about going to college? Your dad, was also a college student. He asked all the questions he could, but almost no one could give him the correct answer. They all started talking to him about random things, and no one thought of helping him find the answers to the questions he took pictures of. Yunqing felt helpless when he saw his father's reply. Dad, do you still want me to get married? Is now the time to worry about this? At the same time, a certain entrepreneurial base. Limo also received Yunqing's VK message. Looking at the message on the phone, he frowned, a little confused. What did his investor send? Chemistry test paper? The 2nd generation of rich people also have to take chemistry exams. Judging from the contact over the past 2 days, this investor is no ordinary person, and every move he makes has a hidden meaning. What is the purpose of him sending this to me? Testing my level? But why do you give out chemistry test papers if you want to test people's level? But thinking that since the message had been sent to me, I had to reply anyway, I waved to an intern in the office who had just graduated from college. Here is a question for you to do. Chapter 21: The Boss's Test. The intern graduated from a 985 university and was doing publicity work. Recently, the company has attracted new investment and its business has shifted from cameras to sports cameras. The RD department has also developed new functions that have grasped the current user pain points very well. The company's employees are very motivated and feel that the company has a bright future. This intern is no exception, he wants to stay in the company and become a part of it. When he heard his boss calling him, he immediately ran into the office and saw the chemistry questions on the boss's computer screen. Intern. Limo, will it? Intern, boss, I majored in marketing in college and chose liberal arts in high school. This question looks like a science question, I don't know how to do it. Limo frowned, feeling a little difficult. The intern asked, is this topic important? Limo said, this was sent by our investor. He holds 50% of Jiaoying's shares. Do you think it is important? Investors. The intern immediately took it seriously, thinking this was a great opportunity for him to show off. Boss, please send me the question. Several of my college classmates are now working in educational institutions. I'll ask them. They will definitely understand. Limo thought for a moment and said, I'll send it to the company email address, and let others think about it too. Let's brainstorm together. The intern secretly thought that this was not good as the competition had suddenly become fierce. While everyone still doesn't know that this is related to the company's investors, he has to hurry up, rush back to his workstation, and send a group message to his college classmates. College classmates. Aren't you working in a camera company now? How come you guys who work on cameras have to take chemistry exams? In turn, this is a question sent by my big boss. He is very urgent. Hurry up and finish it. Maybe my internship will be secured. College classmate, is your big boss still a high school student? The intern looked up and noticed that many people in the office were discussing the meaning of the chemistry questions they received in their mailbox. Bad, they've received it. Don't worry about it, hurry up, it's urgent, I'll treat you to a meal when you're done. That's what you said. College classmate, this question is very simple, it's a question for high school students, choose A. The intern immediately raised his hand and shouted to Limo in the office, Boss, choose A for that question. Limo's okay came from the inner room. But it didn't take long. The intern received a new email in his mailbox. When he opened it, he saw a full page of chemistry questions that he had taken a picture of with his mobile phone. The intern was dumbfounded. What was going on? Was the boss really a high school student? When he looked up, everyone in the office seemed to be startled by his voice just now. He also vaguely heard the secretary mention investors. Everyone seemed to take it seriously and searched for the answers to the test papers on Baidu. The intern suddenly became anxious and asked, Roll it up, right? You guys who work on cameras can be better than my classmates in educational institutions. I just don't believe it. So he sent the test paper again. Although my college classmate was very surprised, he thought about the fact that the internship period was secured and decided to help out to the end, and quickly sent the answer over. This time there are not only multiple choice questions, but also essay questions. After seeing this, the intern took a piece of paper from the table and started writing quickly. After finishing, he immediately ran into the office and handed it to Limo. Limo nodded, not bad, do a good job. The intern left satisfied. Limo picked up his phone, took a photo of the answer on the paper, and sent it to Qing. After thinking about it, he felt that he should tell the investor about the company's recent situation. Mr. Yun, we tried your suggestion last time. I think what you said makes a lot of sense. Our main business has now shifted from cameras to sports cameras. The R&D department has tried the selfie stick erasing function you mentioned. It's not technically difficult. Jiuying 125 is a camera manufacturer. Sports cameras are different from ordinary cameras, but they can be made with some time. Limo continued, the initial version has been made. This morning we contacted an online outdoor sports blogger. He tried it and gave a very high evaluation of our product. We posted a questionnaire online, and users also highly recognized this feature. This feature will become our promotional signboard. In addition, we have also tried to make panoramic cameras, which is not done by many people in the current market. We plan to work hard in this area next. What do you think? Qing replied quickly, not bad, do a good job. Limo. Why did he seem to have said this? Then, Qing sent another message, after the company's business is done, we can find time to have dinner together. Seeing this, Limo was satisfied. For an angel investor, his funds are one aspect and his interpersonal relationships are another. What bothered Limo the most was that he didn't know anyone in the business world. To the extent that when the company needed money the most, he couldn't even get an investment. As a boss, his network of connections was pitifully small. Investors are different. Each of them has intricate and intertwined relationships behind them, and they deal with a lot of companies. If he could get to know some people through Qing and expand his social network, he would benefit greatly from just getting to know the other person and having a nodding acquaintance. From the demeanor Qing displayed when he last met him, Limo had no doubt that he was a rich second generation with a prominent family background. Such people will have a good network of interpersonal relationships. At the very least, it would be good for him to know two rich second generations. If the company goes bankrupt in the future and he tries to start a new business, they can also get some sponsorship for himself. Limo was very satisfied with the result. He looked back at the intern who was working hard. If the company could enter the next round of financing, this person could be promoted slightly. Unlike Li Mo's satisfaction, Qing was sweating profusely at this moment. Fortunately, I got the answer in the end. Although the person was slightly different from the person I expected to give me the answer, I finally got the answer. Qing sat on the carpet with the test paper on the coffee table, facing the second bedroom. His cell phone was placed on his knees, and as soon as he heard the door of the second bedroom open, he would immediately put the phone away, just like a student cheating in the exam. Click. The door handle of the second bedroom turned. There was no trace of emotion on Qing's face. He glanced at Liu Yao, said nothing, and lowered his head to continue writing the paper. But where Liu Yao couldn't see, he stretched his legs slightly forward. Professor Liu 1T come, right? I have just finished copying the answer to the first question. If she were to watch beside me, I would have to stare blankly at the blank part at the back. Fortunately, Liu Yao turned around and went back into the master bedroom. Qing quickly showed his mobile phone screen again and continued to answer the questions. Professor Liu must have hidden something in the second bedroom and didn't want her to see it, but she didn't know why she entered the master bedroom. Chapter 22 I'm tired, let's destroy it. Qing couldn't judge when Liu Yao would suddenly appear. The door of the master bedroom was diagonally opposite the second bedroom, which was his blind spot. If Liu Yao didn't close the door and walked silently, he would be doomed. As a result, Qing copied even faster. He has to sign many contracts in person during his long years in the office, so Qing has practiced calligraphy for this purpose. The words he writes are clear, but also have a sense of elegance that is pleasing to the eye. It's a pity that I don't have time to appreciate it now. Swish, swish, swish. Chemical formulas appeared on the test paper. He didn't know whether the answers were correct, but at least he didn't hand in a blank paper and kept working until the last big question. Qing thought that since Li Mo was able to send the answer, he would definitely not send a wrong answer, so he must have asked someone to make it. If I write a perfect score in the end. No. I absolutely cannot get a perfect score. I have to make some mistakes. Being too perfect is not a good thing. Qing is very clear about this. Got it. Don't copy this equation. It seems like a condition in a verification process. It doesn't matter if a condition is missing. I can explain it later as I was just guessing. Depend on. I'm a top student with over 600 points in the college entrance examination. What's wrong with guessing the correct answer? Professor Liu can't question me. Yes, it can't. Thinking this in his mind, Qing quickly finished writing the answer. After finishing, he checked it again, although he didn't know what to check. Probably just to see if I copied the wrong answer. The multiple choice questions also need to be modified. Let us change an option, such as changing D to B. Generally, the difficult questions are placed at the end, and it's okay for me to write the most difficult ones wrong. Professor Liu can't question me. After about 10 minutes, Qing finally finished the paper. He saw Liu Yao holding a bedspread and going into the second bedroom for a few minutes. He must be tidying up the small bed by the window for Qing to sleep on. Professor Liu decorated the second bedroom like that, probably because she never thought that there would be a day when it would be used to entertain guests. Even if there was, it would not be now when she had just moved into the new home less than a month ago. Be busy for a while. Liu Yao noticed that Qing stopped writing and walked towards him. Without saying anything, he stretched out his hand to him. Qing handed over the paper. She looked at the paper very quickly and could determine whether Qing's answer was correct just by taking a quick glance. Finished watching the first side. Liu Yao nodded slightly, not bad. So. Qing thought he was very humble. Then, he saw Liu Yao turned over to her back. Qing stared at Liu Yao, paying attention to every subtle expression on her face, and found nothing unusual. Should I be able to get away with it? But if Professor Liu thinks that my answer is good and gives me another test paper tomorrow, what should I do then? Do you want to ask some roommates to recommend you to 2, 3, and 3-year seniors on WeChat? Just in case. Liu Yao suddenly did this today, and he was completely unprepared. Qing felt that after this incident, he had to be more fully prepared. Just when he was hesitating whether to add a senior or a junior. Tell me your solution to this problem. Liu Yao sat down on the sofa with the test paper spread out on the coffee table. She leaned over slightly and stared at Yunqing. She looks like a beautiful flower in her purple shirt. Gurgle. Yunqing swallowed quietly. He was not admiring Professor Lu's appearance. He was nervous and quickly glanced at the position of Lu Yao's fingers. As luck would have it, the question was about emitting an equation on purpose. Yunqing said seriously, "The ideas are all written on it." Lu Yao had a blank expression on his face. "I still want to hear your thoughts." Yunqing said, "I don't know where to start." "Start from the beginning." Yunqing asked tentatively, "Professor Lu, where did I write it wrong? Why don't you just tell me directly?" This time he didn't call Lu Yao sister, but Professor Lu. "Call me sister at this time." Yunqing was not sure whether Professor Lu would explode in the next second and ask her, a patient, to lie down on the spot and be hospitalized for treatment. Lu Yao did not beat around the bush like him. She pointed her finger at the equation that Yunqing deliberately missed. Lu Yao said calmly, "I just want to know how you came up with the correct answer when you lacked the most important necessary condition. You even mentioned that condition later." Lu Yao looked into Yunqing's eyes. "This is not a matter of carelessness." Yunqing. Bad. The one I just deleted is actually the most important derivation condition. I think that equation is obviously the shortest. Yunqing wanted to pat his head. It would be fine if he didn't understand it, but why did he have to change the answer? He even made a problem out of the correct answer. However, Yunqing soon discovered that it was not just a matter of changing the answers. Lu Yao turned the test paper back to the first page and pointed to the answers to the last few multiple-choice questions that he had corrected. Lu Yao said, "These questions are the easiest ones on the test paper, but you actually chose the wrong ones. You chose the hardest ones correctly. And you actually answered the questions you got wrong in the answers to the questions at the end." She continued to look into Yunqing's eyes. "Then why are you wrong?" The only thought in Yunqing's mind at this moment was regret. He regretted that he had changed the answers randomly in order to make the test paper not so perfect. "It's obvious that I should choose the right one, but I always make the wrong choice. You can do the hardest thing, but you can't do the simplest thing?" Yunqing felt dissatisfied. "Professor Lu, you are not following the routine. Whose test paper doesn't he put the most difficult questions at the back? Why did you put the simplest thing last? Bully me for not understanding the question. The most difficult questions in the college entrance examination are all at the end. You are more cunning than the college entrance examination." Just as he had this thought, Lu Yao's voice rang out. He realized that Lu Yao had seen through him the moment he copied the answer. Lu Yao said calmly, "Then there are the questions you answered later. The questions are about high school, but your solution ideas actually involve college. Many of them are things you will learn in your sophomore year, but you can actually write them out now." "Yunqing, I didn't realize you have such a strong learning ability." Yunqing laughed dryly. "I think Li Mo found some college students to help him write the answers. He couldn't blame Li Mo for being ignorant. Among so many people, he was the only one who gave himself the answer. Take it out." Yunqing pretended not to understand. "What? What do you think?" Lu Yao looked straight at him, his fingers lightly touching the coffee table. "I have supervised many exams. I am very familiar with the facial expressions and movements of a student who cheats. I have seen a lot of them. Just now I occasionally glanced at you, and I thought you wouldn't do that, but I never expected that you would cheat in my house, even in the exam room. Your attitude is so arrogant." Yunqing. It would be fine if he only had a vague understanding of the matter. Yunqing was confident that he could fool Lu Yao no matter how strong his observation skills were. But the thing is, he really didn't know anything. He grabbed the phone at his feet and handed it to Lu Yao. Yunqing stood up and slammed heavily on the sofa, and Lu Yao, who was sitting next to him, was shocked. He slumped on the sofa, staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. "I'm tired, let's destroy it." Chapter 23. How did you get into university? Lu Yao felt that if the person sitting in front of her was not Yunqing, but any other student in the school, she would have started scolding. "At my home, under my supervision, they were doing the questions I set, and the difficulty of the questions was only at high school level. Even so, you still dare to cheat. But it is precisely because this person is Yunqing." The time she spent with him was not too long, just 2 days. In just these 2 days, she was almost certain that Yunqing was a person with extremely stable emotions, and nothing could cause him to have huge emotional fluctuations. No matter what he faces or who he is, you can always see that sunny and warm smile on his face. Although Lu Yao was unwilling to admit it, his smile was bright and warm. When facing such a person, if she yelled at him like she did with other students, trying to scare him by her serious and stern image, she would be the one who looked embarrassed in the end. And he still had that lazy smile. So, Lu Yao seemed unusually calm at this moment, not angry or furious, which was completely different from how she behaved when facing other students. She just silently opened Yunqing's phone. Yunqing didn't T-lock the screen. Looking at the numerous software names above, Lu Yao looked at him and said, "Which software do you want? Tell me yourself. Even if it's cheating, I want to know which ones you made and which ones you didn't." "None of these." Yunqing's eyes were still empty and he had given up struggling. VX. He was not afraid of Lu Yao reading his WeChat account. There was nothing shameful in it. He would only be afraid of others seeing it if there was something shameful in it. As for whether Lu Yao would know his privacy? I'm just afraid that you don't want to understand. Yunqing's eyes moved and fell on Lu Yao's fingers, trying to analyze what she was looking at from the amplitude of her finger movements. Click the lower right corner. Okay. She opened VX. She opened it, but her fingers didn't move. She didn't click on any messages, but only saw a limited number of replies. The first one should be Li Mo, who finally replied with "okay." The second one should be my uncle's daughter, my sister who is in 6th grade, and the ones behind her are some high school classmates and relatives. Lu Yao's finger was suspended in the air, and he sneered, "You even asked your 6th grade sister about this?" Yunqing's eyes were dull. "It's just a last-ditch effort." After a pause, he added, "What if she understands? Lu Yao?" She suddenly didn't know what to say. For a long while, Lu Yao was like an interrogator. "From whom did you get the answer?" Yunqing said, "Li Mo." Lu Yao's eyes fell on the first item in the message list, the contact named Jiayin Li Mo. Moving his eyes, Yunqing noticed that when Lu Yao opened the chat conversation, his fingers moved in a large motion. At the end of the conversation, Li Mo told him about the company's recent situation. Seeing a long list of content and knowing that it was private information, Lu Yao quickly swiped upwards to look at the dozen or so photos sent by the other party. Yunqing felt a little regretful that she didn't watch it. But think about it, now is not the time to explain to her, and his relationship with Lu Yao is not yet at the point where she is willing to listen to his investment story. Lu Yao looked at the photos as fast as he looked at the test papers. Soon, I finished watching them all. It was exactly the same as what Yunqing wrote on the test paper, except for the few answers he deliberately changed. Lu Yao took a deep breath and threw the phone back into Yunqing's arms. "So you copied everything?" Yunqing said, "I changed a few more." "Is there a difference?" Lu Yao laughed angrily. The simplest option was changed in the multiple choice question, and the most critical derivation condition was deleted in the essay question. Yunqing stared at the ceiling, as if he had lost his soul. "Or you can strangle me to death." Lu Yao had no idea how many times Yunqing had made her speechless. She took a deep breath, raised her leg and gently kicked his calf. Lu Yao said, "Stand up, even if you copied it, I want to know what you don't know." She was holding the test paper and saw Yunqing's eyes falling on her. Lu Yao asked, "What don't you know?" "It's rotten anyway." Yunqing didn't hide anything and just laid down completely. "None of them. Even if you don't know any of them, there should be a limit." Seeing Yunqing's dying look, Lu Yao grabbed his arm, pulled him up from the sofa, made him sit up straight, and then sat next to Yunqing with the test paper spread out on her knees. She still had a little expectation for Yunqing, so she started from the last big question. "Start with the known conditions given in the problem." Lu Yao's voice was very calm, but Yunqing could tell that she was obviously suppressing her anger. She had never seen a student like this before. Her voice is very clear. Yunqing was listening, but his eyes were looking at Lu Yao's delicate face. Professor Lu is so beautiful when she looks serious. But, Professor Lu, I remember that when my company went public, I was not as nervous as I am just now. I also remembered that when my company entered the overseas market and was besieged by a large group of foreign tycoons, I was not so embarrassed. You really caught me off guard today." As if he noticed Yunqing's gaze, Lu Yao raised his head to look at him, but saw Yunqing looking at the paper seriously. Lu Yao asked, "Did you understand what I just said?" Yunqing confessed, "I don't understand." Lu Yao frowned. I explained it so clearly, even the most basic knowledge from the high school textbook was repeated to you, and you didn't understand. Yunqing nodded. I don't understand. I had thrown those things away somewhere so long ago that even if you put the textbook in front of me, it would take me a long time to understand it. Liu Yao took a deep breath. The calmness that he had forced himself to maintain when facing Yunqing seemed to be showing signs of loosening. She pointed her finger at the first chemical formula written by Yunqing. You understand this, right? Don't know. Then you should be familiar with the triangle above the equal sign, right? Yunqing took a deep breath and said, to be honest, I just searched my memory but I still can't figure out why there is a triangle above the equal sign. Seeing his reaction, Yunqing didn't understand, but Liu Yao did. Finally, she couldn't hold it anymore, and stood up from the sofa, looking directly at Yunqing, her voice rising a few notches. You don't even know how to heat something, how did you get into university? Hearing this, Yunqing sighed. He was also feeling fortunate that he traveled through time after the college entrance examination. It was really difficult for him to travel back to the day before the college entrance examination. Professor Liu, don't be angry. Sit down first and we'll talk slowly. Liu Yao ignored him and continued to ask, even if you don't know anything, don't you know that many majors in college can be started from scratch, but chemistry requires you to have a learning foundation in junior high and high school. Why did you apply to the Chemical Engineering Department of Qing Institute of Technology? There are so many majors in Qing Institute of Technology, but you chose to come to the School of Chemistry and Chemical Engineering. Yunqing answered truthfully, I want to challenge myself. Liu Yao laughed angrily and said, you are not only challenging yourself, you are also challenging me and all the teachers in the School of Chemical Engineering. How do you want me to teach a student with zero basics? Starting from junior high school. Chapter 24. Why don't you just strangle me to death? Choosing a college major is one of the most important choices in many people's lives. It will determine where their future life will go and what kind of work they will do in the second half of their life. The decision needs to be made with great caution. But that is not the case for Yunqing. This is even more true for Yunqing, who had reached the pinnacle of his life in his previous life and stood at the top of the mountain and had seen all the scenery in the world. For him, what major to study in college is a very small matter. If we use the education system as an analogy, it is like a doctoral student who has won numerous honors returning to kindergarten and deciding whether to eat vegetables for lunch. It is very simple and does not even require thinking. What Yunqing didn't expect was that the vegetables got stuck in his throat. Yunqing has a strong learning ability. In his previous life, he was able to open branches all over the world, with tens of thousands of employees, and the decisions he had to make every day were measured in billions. If his learning ability was a little weaker, or his ability to accept information was a little poorer, he could have brought the company to an irretrievable situation, and countless people would have lost their jobs because of him. If Yunqing is given some time, a week, he will be able to integrate and flexibly apply all the chemistry knowledge from junior high school to high school. In the previous 3 months, Yunqing had just traveled through time and was just beginning to enjoy life. Study? You want me to spend time studying? The sudden death in my previous life is still fresh in my mind. If you ask me to study, then I must have died in vain. I can't learn anything and I feel sleepy when I see a book. Yunqing thought that if he took it slow after entering university and took a minute every day to use his brain, he would have no problem passing the exam. But no matter what he did, he never thought of it. The day after he decided to pursue Professor Liu put this difficult problem in front of him. If he hadn't made that decision, he could have handled it easily. But he has made his decision. He doesn't make decisions lightly, but once he makes one, he will carry it through to the end. He will not stop unless there is an obstacle so powerful that it is completely out of his control. Fortunately, Yunqing has always believed that misfortunes often go hand in hand with blessings, and blessings often go hand in hand with misfortunes. Since Professor Liu already knows his true level and he has no system that can learn all the knowledge in 1 second, he might as well give up as thoroughly as possible. Yunqing fell back on the sofa. Professor Liu, why don't you just strangle me to death? Liu Yao was indeed very angry. This involved her work and she was always very serious about it. But when she saw his behavior, she calmed down instantly. What could she do? She couldn't really strangle him. Take 2 deep breaths. Liu Yao said calmly, even if you play around during the 3 months of vacation and don't take your studies seriously, you can't forget all the knowledge you learned from junior high school to high school. Qing started learning chemistry in the third year of junior high school, and studied science in high school, which also lasted 3 years. Thinking of the college entrance examination results of the students in Class 1 of applied chemistry that she had seen before, especially the results of comprehensive science, Liu Yao realized that it was unreasonable. Qing's grades came to mind, and Liu Yao frowned and said, "Your college entrance examination score was 632 points, and your comprehensive science score was 263 points, so how come you don't even know what heating is?" It is absolutely impossible to say that Qing cheated in the college entrance examination. Seeing that he even asked his 6th grade sister on VX just now, he definitely did not pretend not to know on purpose. Qing tilted his head slightly. "It's impossible to say that my 35-year-old soul replaced the 18-year-old one." He mumbled, "Something happened during the vacation." "As for what happened?" "Privacy. Professor Liu, I will be angry if you ask me again." Qing didn't look like he was lying. In a trance, Liu Yao thought of how Qing suddenly kicked the bed when he woke up this morning. Is it possible? What kind of accident happened to him that caused him to suffer partial amnesia and, as luck would have it, forget all the chemistry knowledge he learned from junior high school to high school? What a coincidence. Liu Yao wanted to verify his guess. What is Newton's first law? R. Qing was stunned. What the hell is this? Liu Yao continued, what is Mendel's law of inheritance? What? Odds change, evens don't. Symbols look at the quadrant. You remembered this again. Isn't this a jingle? What is the binomial theorem? Seeing Qing lowering his head and thinking seriously, then shaking his head firmly, Liu Yao was basically certain. Not just chemistry, he forgot everything he learned in high school. Liu Yao let out a long sigh and sat down on the sofa again. Her eyes were slightly closed, as if she was thinking about something. Actually. Except when Liu Yao suddenly asked about Newton's first law, Qing was really stunned for a moment. But when she continued to ask, Qing understood what she meant. Sure enough, Professor Liu had already thought of a suitable excuse for me. Then I'll just go ahead and pretend. As for what the excuse was, I don't know. Anyway, I really forgot those things, and the confusion on my face was not fake. After a long while, Liu Yao finally opened his eyes again. In your case, I suggest you go back to repeat your studies. Applied chemistry is different from other university majors. It requires a solid foundation from junior high school and high school. Otherwise, you will be listening to nonsense in class. Qing has already entered the state. Professor Liu, it's not easy for me to get into university. But you won't learn anything in 4 years of college. I didn't come to university to learn anything, Qing wanted to say subconsciously. To be honest, except for highly professional subjects or some things that are considered to be axioms that cannot be changed, as long as it involves the market and changes, the knowledge learned in university will always lag behind. For example, it will take at least 1 or 2 years for a very classic and sensational marketing case to appear in the market and appear in university marketing course textbooks. But chemistry is obviously a hard subject with a high degree of professionalism, which is why Qing said he wanted to challenge himself. He really can't understand. A thought flashed through Qing's mind, and he suddenly realized, how about Professor Liu, you teach me? You teach me? Qing said with a look of regret, although I have forgotten all the knowledge I learned in high school, and although I feel very tired every time I use my brain, I still think I have the ability to learn. Professor Liu, if you teach me, I can learn it. You also don't want to see me fall behind everyone else in my studies, spend 4 years in college in a daze, graduate without having learned anything, not be able to find a good job, sleep on the streets, go astray in life, do nothing for half my life, and end up in a miserable situation, right? Qing wept, and acted like a perfect match. As for what you said, Professor Liu, about letting me go back to high school to repeat my studies, in my situation, I can at least have a college diploma after graduating from college in 4 years. If I go back to high school, I will have to work in a factory to screw screws. Hearing Qing's words, Liu Yao seemed to realize that for a young, 18-year-old boy, his future was in his own hands at this moment. To teach or not to teach? Teach. That has to start from junior high school. Don't teach. Although the first time she met this guy was in bed, he had pried into almost all of her private secrets last night, and he even used a tone that made Liu Yao get goosebumps just thinking about it to coax her to sleep. It was so hateful. But Yunqing's life may very likely end up in the very miserable situation he described, which is something she, as a teacher, absolutely does not want to see. But if she really had to teach him, she and Yunqing would be in a tangled mess. She always felt that since she woke up this morning, everything was moving in a direction she had no idea about. It was like entering a maze and there was a hand guiding her to a fixed destination. She didn't know if this was her illusion. Liu Yao pondered for a long time. No matter where the final result will be, at least she is sure that she doesn't want Yunqing to become the person he described. The school has just started. Starting from junior high school, he will be able to catch up with the learning progress of the university in 2 months. Okay, I'll teach you. Liu Yao looked at Yunqing and said seriously, start from junior high school, and take your time until you catch up with the school's learning progress. The premise is that you must study hard and don't treat it with the mentality of drawing comics. After all, you are studying this major. Yunqing nodded very seriously. When Liu Yao turned around and looked for the bookshelf behind him to see if there were any books suitable for Yunqing's study at this stage, Yunqing looked at Liu Yao's actions and smiled like a big bad wolf. Let the wolf into their house. Professor Liu. Chapter 25, Endless Profits. The bookcase behind the sofa is very large, filling up an entire wall. When placed in the living room, it adds a literary atmosphere to the entire space. The books in the bookcase were all accumulated by Liu Yao since he started college. The types were very diverse, including school textbooks, teaching syllabuses, academic works, humanities and social sciences, encyclopedias, historical ye-books, and occasionally a couple of literary classics. All books are divided into special categories. Unlike the many bookcases that Yunqing had seen in his previous life that were used to decorate storefronts, these books were almost all flipped through, and many of them had obvious wrinkles. Liu Yao found some books related to chemistry and ran her fingers across the covers of those books over and over again. Her brows furrowed deeper and deeper. Not found. I really can't find it. She couldn't find any book on the basics of chemistry that would allow her to teach a student who had forgotten all junior high school chemistry, not even any popular science books. Those things were too far away from her. No matter how hard she tried, she would never have imagined that as a university professor, one day she would be teaching junior high school chemistry, the most basic kind at that. This is too difficult for her. Yunqing saw Liu Yao's dilemma, and then he started to pretend to be dead. He looked around as if he was getting to know this house for the first time. He was studying the layout of the living room very carefully, as if every part of it attracted him. Occasionally, Liu Yao would glance at him from the corner of his eye, but he would immediately turn his head away so as not to see her. He knew very well that the period before the teaching officially started was the time when Liu Yao was most likely to regret. During this period, no matter what he said, it would easily lead to Liu Yao refusing to teach, so he didn't say a word. I know that for you, teaching junior high school chemistry is like a sports champion teaching a child to walk. It is so basic that it cannot be more basic. You cannot find such a basic reading material even if you search through the bookcase. But it's none of my business, you promised me anyway. If you can't find it, I will sit here and wait for you to find it. No matter what method you use, I won't say a word until you find it. But once Liu Yao is found and starts teaching, things will be different. She already has the input costs. At that time, even if she encountered any problems that made her want to regret it, she would have to consider her sunk costs. For example, I have spent so much time looking for the book, so just teach it, it's not a big deal. Then, the gears of fate began to turn. Liu Yao stood beside the bookcase and stared at Yunqing for more than 10 seconds, but Yunqing seemed to be completely oblivious to him. His eyes were fixed out the window, as if there was something very attractive outside, and he didn't even blink. Letting out a breath, Liu Yao left the bookcase. Liu Yao said, "There are no books at home that can teach you. It's too difficult for you at this stage. There is a bookstore in the mall downstairs. You wait for me at home, and we will start the class after I come back." Finally, Yunqing turned his head over. He still didn't say anything, but just nodded. Liu Yao narrowed her eyes, clenched her fist quietly, picked up the door key from the cabinet, and turned to walk out the door. Yunqing smiled as if his evil plan had succeeded. Although Yunqing was indeed caught off guard by Liu Yao's sudden taking out of a chemistry test paper, he was also nervous because he was caught cheating in the middle of the test. He wondered if his plan would go awry because of his insufficient preparation, and whether Professor Lu's impression of him would decline because of this. Yun Qing could care less about what others think. But since he has decided to pursue Professor Lu, he must pay attention to Lu Yao's opinion of him, which is very important. Obviously, Professor Lu is kind. He was willing to help a student who suddenly cleared out several years of knowledge from her brain to get out of her knowledge dilemma. I was not wrong about her. Professor Lu was always so hard-mouthed but soft-hearted, and she had no idea that she was the little white rabbit. Yun Qing was very satisfied with the final result. Originally, he was worried about how to further deepen his connection with Professor Lu after moving into her home. Their current connection was not strong enough and was very weak. After the 7-day sick leave, if he cannot find an opportunity to maintain long-term communication with Professor Lu, their relationship will return to the beginning, and it will become more difficult for him to enter Professor Lu's house again. Despite cheating in the exam and forgetting all the knowledge, the perfect image that Yun Qing wanted to establish in front of Lu Yao was flawed. But this flaw is within the range he can accept. In fact, the benefits of exposing this flaw are endless. As long as Lu Yao starts teaching Yun Qing and the 7-day sick leave is over, Yun Qing will have a reason to maintain long-term contact with Lu Yao, which Lu Yao cannot refuse. Then he could run to Lu Yao's house whenever he wanted, hang around in front of Professor Lu every day, and make his presence felt in front of her. Moreover, Professor Lu probably overlooked one point at this moment. Although Yun Qing had almost forgotten all the knowledge about chemistry, he was very clear that mathematics and physics accounted for a large proportion in the study of chemistry courses. Yun Qing had looked at his class schedule and found that there was a course on physical chemistry. If you want to thoroughly digest the knowledge you learned in university chemistry, you also need to improve your math and physics. Professor Lu faced an extremely huge teaching project. She not only had to teach herself chemistry, but also mathematics and physics. Chemistry starts in the 3rd year of junior high school. But physics is taught in the 2nd year of junior high school, while mathematics is taught in elementary school. Although Yun Qing was not so far from forgetting everything he learned in elementary school, he pretended to be stupid in junior high school math so that he could definitely ask Professor Lu to teach him. By the time Lu Yao realized this, it was too late to go back. Professor Lu, you even teach chemistry, so what's wrong with teaching me math? What's wrong with teaching me physics? I just need this to catch up with the school's learning progress. Then, Lu Yao's investment in Yun Qing will become greater and greater, until Lu Yao has no way to retreat. Yun Qing chuckled, Professor Lu will buy the textbooks later. I have to spend some time and effort to learn them as soon as possible. I can't let something like today happen again, where I am caught off guard. As long as he learns those things, the initiative of Lu Yao's teaching progress will be back in Yun Qing's hands. He can control the speed of teaching. After all, in one-on-one teaching, if I say I don't understand something here, you can't skip to the next knowledge point, right? I still don't understand. It wouldn't be too much if you explained it again. Okay. I understand. But when I encountered similar questions while doing homework, I couldn't wrap my mind around them right away. Could you help me analyze it again? I can do the questions, but I can't connect them with the previous and following knowledge points. Can you help me organize my thoughts? Then in this process, Yun Qing can extend the teaching time indefinitely until he successfully conquers Professor Lu. Yun Qing even feels that even if he succeeds, this can become one of the daily pleasures for the two of them in the future. Although Lu Yao might want to beat him to death when he realizes it, by that time, Professor Lu, if you strangle me to death, you will be murdering your own husband. Are you going to be widowed? Of course, Yun Qing thought that Professor Lu's regular school schedule was already very tight, and he had to find time to give him private lessons. He has to be careful not to let Professor Lu get tired during the teaching process. But we can't let Professor Lu think that teaching him is an easy thing. It still has to be a little difficult, otherwise Professor Lu's investment cost is not high enough. Yun Qing felt that this was not difficult to achieve. Chapter 26, Mother helps her child with homework. Lu Yao left quickly and came back quickly. He left with empty hands and came back with a big bag full of books. Bookstores rarely sell textbooks, so what she bought were tutorial books for the relevant texts. From junior high school to high school, it is very complete. Although it is just a tutorial material, it contains all the necessary knowledge points, allowing Yun Qing to read it by himself when he is free, which makes it easier for him to understand. In addition to the tutorial books, she also bought a thick stack of test papers. Teaching cannot just be about letting him know. Just seeing it does not mean understanding it. Learning must be done in conjunction with test papers to strengthen understanding. If you do enough tests, you will be able to understand it even if you don't understand it. Of course, Lu Yao also has a hidden sense of evil taste in this. Thinking of Yun Qing's desperate look when he was doing the test paper just now, Lu Yao felt secretly happy in her heart. This brat always acted too calm in front of her, and she only saw him feeling uncomfortable when he was doing the test paper. In that case, then you should do a few more papers. Logically speaking, it wouldn't be necessary to have that much money, but in order to see Yun Qing show that expression a few more times, Lu Yao felt that the money was worth it. Sure enough, when Lu Yao sat down on the sofa and took out the papers from the bag, Yun Qing showed that expression again. She instantly felt that the money was well spent. Instead, I felt a little regretful that I didn't buy more just now. I just handed him a test paper and asked him to do it whenever I had time. These papers will be used to support your studies, one for each day. I'll tear up the answers first to prevent you from cheating again. Lu Yao is very relaxed at home, not as serious as he is at school. Seeing Yun Qing sitting on the carpet with his back against the sofa, looking so comfortable, she followed his example and sat next to him. The distance between the two people is just right. In front of Yun Qing, Lu Yao took out the test paper, turned to the back, and tore off the answers at the back with a rip. Not just one portion, all of them. After all, this guy has a criminal record with Lu Yao. In order to cheat, he even spared no effort on his 6th grade sister. He is capable of doing anything. Yun Qing was stunned. Sister, I feel that the bridge of trust between us is already shaky. Lu Yao just glanced at him and didn't answer. Instead, he said, call me my post. Okay, sister. The corners of Lu Yao's mouth twitched slightly. This kid is really good at judging the situation. When he was caught cheating just now, he called her Professor Lu all the time. Now that the crisis is over, he immediately calls her sister. After tearing up the answer sheet, Lu Yao put the test paper aside, then took out the junior high school chemistry tutorial book, opened it and glanced at the table of contents. Seeing this, Yun Qing sensibly moved his butt and sat next to Lu Yao. The distance between the two of them suddenly shortened, so close that Lu Yao could feel the scorching heat emanating from Yun Qing. This distance is too ambiguous. Sit over there. I can't read the textbook anymore. Lu Yao said sternly, I just want to take a look at the specific content. I want to tell you what you can accept and what you can't. I will teach you junior high school chemistry. I don't need a textbook. Yun Qing. He felt a little regretful and then sat back. It doesn't matter. You have to sit next to me when you explain the test paper. You can't talk to me without looking at the test paper. Maybe you can, but I can make it impossible for you. After a quick glance, Lu Yao threw the book to Yun Qing, leaned back on the sofa, raised his head, and said clearly, now, open the first chapter. Yun Qing opened the first page and found the first chapter. He glanced at Lu Yao out of the corner of his eye. Her movements were too relaxed, and what came into view was a magnificent scene. The purple shirt outlined her graceful curves, which made people think of the sentence, my sister said purple is very charming. Yun Qing's throat rolled, and he followed her example, looking up at the ceiling. Professor Lu, I really want to go back to the morning when we first met. Why are you looking at the ceiling? Read your textbook. Lu Yao glanced at him, and her tone finally made her sound more serious than she had shown in class. Yun Qing lowered his head to look at the textbook. I saw you looking at the ceiling, I thought there was something up there. Lu Yao said, don't worry about where I look, just look at the textbook. Yun Qing nodded obediently, okay sister. Lu Yao continued, the theme of the first chapter is the chemicals around us, and the secondary theme is the air around the earth. So the first thing we need to understand is the main components in the air. The subsequent content will also revolve around these main components. The content here is very basic. I don't know how much you remember, or if you have forgotten it all. I will just briefly explain it to you, and then you can mark those places in the book with a pen and remember them by yourself later. These include nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, rare gases, and other gases and impurities in very small quantities, among which rare gases include. He is worthy of being a professor at a top university. Although it is very basic stuff, Lu Yao narrates it step by step, and the narration is unfolded in a modular way, presenting very clearly where the key points are and what can be ignored but needs to be remembered. The basic knowledge about chemistry is being awakened in my mind. Then, Qing began to cooperate with Lu Yao's teaching. Just go through the simple ones in one go, ask appropriate questions when there are difficult parts, and expand your associations, so that Lu Yao, the narrator, is always in a very comfortable state. She doesn't need to waste time on simple things, but she will just mention a few words or emphasize the complicated parts. It is easy to teach such students. It was also during this process that Lu Yao could be sure that he had truly forgotten. Fortunately, he has some talent and learns things quickly. Lu Yao believed that if Qing continued to progress at this pace, it would probably take less than 2 months for him to re-inject all the chemical knowledge into his brain. Of course, she would never have thought. Qing was thinking that at the beginning he should make you feel that teaching me is very easy, so that you can gradually get used to it. After all, this is only junior high school. And if I make you feel that I am difficult to teach at the beginning, what if you don't want to teach me later? So when it comes to the difficult parts, I will ask you to extend the teaching time indefinitely. Didn't you buy so many papers? I can make you spend a day on me for each paper. The first chapter is finished very quickly. Lu Yao took out the corresponding exercises from the pile of test papers on the side and handed them to him, allowing him to flexibly apply the knowledge points he had learned. Qing was leaning on the coffee table writing on the test paper. Lu Yao crossed his arms over his chest and watched his movements with narrowed eyes. In a trance, she actually had the illusion that a mother was helping her child with homework. The moment the thought came to her mind, Lu Yao felt as if she had regained the face she had lost last night when she looked at the teacher with big eyes and closed her mouth. She was secretly happy. But then I realized, what kind of mother is helping her child with homework? I am teaching him knowledge, not helping him with homework. Lu Yao shook his head vigorously to put those thoughts aside. Qing turned around. Sister, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Hurry up and do your homework. Qing raised his eyebrows and turned back to continue writing the paper. He was fine just now, why did he suddenly become so fierce again? Sister, what do you think of? Chapter 27 Emergency Contacts. The two of them spent the entire afternoon in a repetitive cycle of teaching, doing exercises, and teaching again. The teaching process also progresses from the most basic air composition to various reactions. Lu Yao thought this speed was very good. Time quietly came to 4:30. Because Lu Yao had class at 5 o'clock, she had to rush to school to attend the class, and the afternoon teaching came to an end. We just talked about several parts, you should understand them all. Next is to do the exercises. I will go to school for class later. During this time, you can do the exercises at home. Do all the questions I just talked about. I will check how you did when you come back. Lu Yao took out the thick stack of test papers, searched through the papers to find the content he had just explained to Qing, and did the questions accordingly. There is a lot of content in the test paper. Lu Yao will have 2 classes that will last nearly 2 hours. During this time, Qing has to stay at home and do his homework seriously. 2 hours. As expected, Qing's face fell and Lu Yao almost laughed out loud. She said with a straight face, you have to complete all these questions by yourself. In order to prevent you from cheating again and not fully understanding the knowledge points, I will take this tutorial book away. I can't let you do the questions by looking at the textbook. In addition, Lu Yao spread out his hand, and his palm fell in front of Qing. What? Cell phone. Professor Lu, I feel that the trust between us is no longer just shaky. You can even ask your 6th grade sister, who knows. Qing handed her the phone. Knowing that Qing's phone was not locked, Lu Yao opened the settings, set a password, and was about to return it to him. Qing hesitated and said, Professor Lu, even though you set a lock screen, I can't open my phone and can only answer calls from others, but what should I do if something happens? I can't find anyone I want to find. It's hard to live without a mobile phone these days. Lu Yao hesitated and was about to speak when Qing continued, if the neighbor downstairs suddenly starts a fire, I won't be able to contact anyone. How about this? There is an emergency contact setting on the phone. I can set you as my emergency contact. If I need help, I can call you even if the screen is locked. After thinking about it, it seems that this is not a bad idea. Anyway, Qing spent the next 2 hours at her home. Others could contact him if they wanted to, and he could also call me if he had anything to do. Don't let him cheat. Lu Yao found the emergency contact setting and entered the phone number. As the numbers appeared one by one, she always had a very strange feeling that she couldn't explain. Is that his emergency contact? Qing continued, Professor Lu, don't give me your work number. If something happens, you might get confused. The work number and personal number are definitely different. If it is a special scenario, confusing the two numbers may cause trouble. Qing understood it very well, and Lu Yao also understood it very well. I know. After deleting the phone number she had already entered and re-entering it, Lu Yao thought of setting the private number as his emergency contact. She felt that the feeling was even stranger. Emergency contacts are very important. Am I an important person to him? No. We are just teachers and students. I just don't want him to cheat. I'm doing this for his studies. This guy will do anything to cheat, even asking his 6th grade sister. Lu Yao quickly convinced himself that the setup was successful and threw the phone to him. Then, without saying anything more, she got up and went into the room, prepared everything she would need for class, and put the third-year junior high school textbook into her handbag. Before leaving, Lu Yao noticed the bottles and jars that Qing had packed up last night, which were scattered all over the house when she was drunk. With a strange feeling in my heart, I took the garbage out. Wait for Lu Yao to close the door. Qing then took the phone, looked at the password input interface, and a smile appeared on his lips. Professor Lu, you gave me your cell phone number yourself, so now I want your contact information. Or an emergency contact. I don't know what Professor Lu was thinking when he entered his phone number just now. Given Professor Lu's personality, he should be able to find some suitable excuses for himself, such as saying it was for the good of my studies. Holding the phone, Qing touched the screen lightly with his fingers and clicked quickly. 1116. Input error. 1118. Input error. 1119. Unlock successful. Many mobile phone software are presented. Qing smiled, Professor Lu is too naive. Doesn't she know that when she clicks the screen, the sliding range of the thumb is too large, and people can see it? Click on Settings and find Emergency Contacts. A string of phone numbers appeared in front of Qing. He silently memoized the number, opened the contact, and saved the number. Note, Ayao. After saving successfully, Qing turned off the screen and put the phone aside. After a while, he couldn't help but take a look, woke up the screen, and his eyes fell on the hash key. He also felt a strange feeling in his heart. Just press the hash key 5 times and the call will be connected to Lu Yao. This number will always be saved in the settings. Perhaps he will never use this function in his life. If he uses it, he must be in a very dangerous situation. At that time, Lu Yao is his only choice. In the 30 years of his previous life, Qing had never used this function. The first person to use it was Lu Yao. Qing pondered for a long time and chuckled, that's good, but Professor Lu, one day your emergency contact will be me. Turn off the screen. Qing took a look at the test paper. He had no intention of writing it. Instead, he stood up and picked up the pile of textbooks that Lu Yao had just bought, and took out 6 or 7 other tutorial books. From the second semester of the third year of junior high school to the second semester of the third year of senior high school. Just now, because Lu Yao didn't let her sit next to her, she kicked Qing aside. Qing was a little far away from her. When Lu Yao couldn't see, Qing actually read the whole book. After years of processing large amounts of information, Qing's brain's information processing capabilities have long been beyond ordinary people's imagination. He has trained a unique information processing system that can filter out important content extremely quickly. For their very simple junior high school knowledge, he just glanced at it, and then combined it with the previous and subsequent knowledge points to form blocks of information in his mind. He could clearly understand what the whole book was about and what the core points were after just one glance. So when Lu Yao was giving the lecture just now, Qing was looking at her most of the time, and when Lu Yao looked at him, he looked away. She mostly talked to him while looking at the ceiling. Qing was not interested in the exercises that Lu Yao had given him. He picked up his high school chemistry book and quickly input the information into his brain. He did not try to understand every knowledge point in it in detail, but just knew what he had learned in high school. After reading it once, understand each piece of information in detail. The previous and subsequent knowledge points are connected in series to finally form a system. Of course, Qing only read it twice, so his understanding may not be so thorough, but he has a very intuitive concept of which knowledge points are more difficult and which are relatively simple. He can ask Professor Lu to talk more about this in the future. It is easy to read elementary school textbooks in junior high school, and it is easy to read junior high school textbooks in high school. For someone who has traveled through the entire society's information torrent, there will not be much difference between high school textbooks and elementary school textbooks. At most, the knowledge points are more diverse. Qing quickly threw the books aside. He finished reading them and slowly understood the parts he didn't fully understand. Picking up the exercises Lu Yao left for him, Qing moved a chair to the balcony and stared out the window in a daze. When my eyes got tired, I lowered my head and quickly wrote 2 questions with a pen. Then continue looking up at the sky. As for his cell phone, Qing never even glanced at it the entire time. In fact, if he didn't think that someone would contact him via WeChat, he could go a whole day without looking at his cell phone. Besides, Professor Lu told me not to watch it. It gets dark quickly in shooting in September. Qing looked at the clouds in the sky, and it seemed as if everything around him had slowed down. Having been busy for most of his life in his previous life, he seemed to never have the time to stop and see how the clouds moved or what color the sky was when the sun set. I don't know how long it was like this, but suddenly a voice came from the balcony. I feel like a husband waiting stone. Chapter 28. The brat is so arrogant. After finishing 2 classes, Lu Yao had to attend a meeting because of some urgent matters in the college. After the meeting, there was more work waiting for her to deal with. When she was working, she would devote herself to it and forget about other things. So when it was 9 o'clock and she walked out of the laboratory, she remembered that she hadn't eaten yet, and someone was waiting for her at home. His phone was locked, and he couldn't unlock it without the password. Without it, he couldn't pay, and without it, he couldn't eat. He just came out of the hospital at noon and hasn't recovered yet. Lu Yao slapped his forehead and jogged in his white laboratory coat without even having time to change his clothes. He quickly got 2 meals before the cafeteria closed and drove back to Daoran Garden. When I got home and opened the door, the living room was dark, with only the chandelier on the balcony on. Lu Yao looked across the living room and saw Qing slumped in a chair with his hands hanging down, his head resting on the back of the chair, facing the ceiling, as if his soul had been drained out. Lu Yao changed his shoes, put the lunchbox on the coffee table, and walked to Qing. He fell asleep. The white light shone on Qing's face. Lu Yao let out a light breath and looked down to see the paper on his knees. She picked it up and glanced at it briefly, then finished all the questions she had told him to do. However, Qing clearly got the most difficult questions wrong. Lu Yao's eyes moved away from the paper and fell on Qing's face again. She said in a very light voice, "You are so arrogant, I thought you could do anything." Waited for a moment. Lu Yao then raised his voice and called out, Qing, wake up, it's time to eat." Qing, with his head resting on the back of the chair, slowly opened his eyes. What caught my eye was Lu Yao, an intellectual and gentle man wearing a white coat, a purple shirt underneath, and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on his straight nose. After seeing Lu Yao's face clearly, Qing's mouth corners turned down. Lu Yao seemed to hear a lot of emotions in his voice, including grievance, crying, and accusation. "Sister, if you don't come back I'm going to stink." Lu Yao. After all, it was because of her negligence that Qing was hungry for so long. Lu Yao's voice was not as serious as usual. There was a sudden meeting at school, and I had work waiting for me after the meeting, so I got off work a little late. "I'm sorry, why didn't you call me?" Hearing this sorry, Qing's heart suddenly melted, and then he said in a teasing tone, "I'm afraid it will affect my sister's work. If you have anything, just call me. I'll usually answer." After all, it was a private number she left. Thinking that Qing was still ill, Lu Yao placed his hand on his forehead. The warm touch made Qing's eyes narrow. Lu Yao asked, "How do you feel?" Knowing that she had worked hard all night, she couldn't continue to play the victim. "I can carry 10 cows." Lu Yao. "It looks like nothing's wrong. Get up and eat. After dinner, I'll explain the questions you got wrong." After saying that, Lu Yao turned back to the living room and went to the dining room carrying the lunch box. Qing didn't stand up immediately. He looked at Lu Yao's back. Professor Lu was so beautiful in her white coat. But when did I become arrogant? He was not asleep just now, he just used his brain, thinking about how to make the question wrong in a reasonable way and deliberately write the correct answer wrong without arousing Professor Lu's suspicion, which also requires some thinking. Using his brain would tire him, so he lay there with his arms and legs spread out. Yunqing twisted his arm and slowly stood up. He saw Lu Yao taking 2 boxes of lunch out of a plastic bag. She obviously hadn't eaten yet. Yunqing said to himself, the dean of the Chemical Engineering Institute is too ignorant. He has to work overtime so late. One day I will replace the guy who arranged work for Professor Lu. Even though he was only a freshman and had just entered the school, he felt that if the dean could expel students, why couldn't students expel the dean? Yunqing took a step and walked towards the restaurant. Lu Yao raised his head and said, "Give me your phone." "Good." Sitting down right opposite Lu Yao, she took the phone from Yunqing, tapped the screen lightly with her fingers, cancelled the lock screen in the settings, and handed it back. Lu Yao nodded. "It seems that you really didn't use your phone to search for the answer." Yunqing looked at her expressionlessly. Lu Yao understood what he meant. "Professor Lu, the bridge of trust between us is about to become ruins." Lu Yao pursed her lips and said, "Just don't ask your sister for the answers to her high school exam paper next time. Let's eat." Although the school cafeteria was about to close, the food was still hot. The two of them stopped talking and focused on eating. Yunqing indeed didn't look at his phone in the past few hours. When he woke up the screen, he saw several people sending him messages. Yunqing ate while reading the messages. In the afternoon, he asked for answers, but they didn't respond. They all asked Yunqing what was going on. Yunqing gave a brief explanation and then turned to look at the dormitory group. The 3 rebellious sons took turns tagging him and asking him what was going on. "Liu Siyuan, Brother Yun, how are you? Is it serious? Tian Mingchan, Brother Yun, did Professor Lu do anything to you? Send us a message, or we'll be scared. Hong Xiao, I heard that Professor Lu went crazy this afternoon." Yunqing frowned slightly when he saw the message from Hong Xiao. He went crazy killing people in the afternoon. What was going on? He typed a reply on the screen with one hand. "I'm fine now, jumping around as usual, but I was hungry for a few hours. I can almost see our dormitory from the sky. What's going on? Brother Yun, who is starving you?" Yunqing looked up at Lu Yao, who was concentrating on eating. "Sister. You went to your sister's house again. Fuck. It's the 3rd night already. I thought I could finally see you in the dormitory at 10 o'clock tonight, but you ran away again." Yunqing typed, "You should be able to see me in 7 days. 7 days. You took 7 days off. Boil. Envious. 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 Next time I will pretend to be sick in front of Professor Lu." Yunqing remained silent. "Even if you rot and stink in the gutter, Professor Lu won't even look at you." He thought of the message Hong Xiao had just sent and asked what was going on. Hong Xiao said, "I heard from senior sister Chu Yujie that at 5 o'clock this afternoon, their whole class was in trouble. It seemed that Professor Lu went to tutor a relative's junior high school child. He was very irritable, and senior sister Chu and the others were scolded badly. Oh yeah, senior sister Chu also said that Professor Lu never collected cell phones during class, but today he suddenly asked everyone to put their cell phones on the podium before class. TSK, I heard that Professor Lu has been angry for 3 days. The seniors are all asking who offended Professor Lu. Yunqing. He seemed to understand why the cell phones were collected, and why those sophomores thought that Professor Lu had tutored a relative's child in junior high school. Perhaps they saw a junior high school chemistry tutorial book in Lu Yao's bag, or perhaps Professor Lu emphasized junior high school knowledge during class. Professor Lu probably vented his anger on them that he had not vented on himself. I cheated right under her nose, forgot all the knowledge, and started learning from scratch. Seniors, you have been wronged. Chapter 29 Couple Pajamas. It seems that apart from the first time we met and the class meeting that night when Lu Yao acted fierce in front of me, he seemed very calm at other times. This afternoon, only when he said, "I want to challenge myself," did she lose control and anger showed on her face. Most of the time, she was very calm. Professor Lu is playing tricks on me. Or maybe it was because I saw her coquettish look last night and she felt it was not appropriate to lose her temper with me, fearing that I would expose her past. It can't be because of my looks, right? Qing couldn't think of it for the time being, but this was a good thing after all. Who doesn't like an emotionally stable partner? Professor Lu will definitely like me. Of course, he certainly didn't expect that it was precisely because his emotions were too stable that after 2 consecutive contacts, Liu Yao felt that he would never have any emotional fluctuations. She knew that if she lost her temper in front of him, Qing would not react at all, which would only make her angrier. It feels like 2 people are swearing at each other. One of them says all the nasty things he can think of, and the other person always responds with "oh, yes, yes, yes," which has no effect other than making that person angrier. Liu Yao felt this from Qing, so she was also very calm when facing Qing. It's so calm that it would be unbelievable to sophomores and juniors. "Why are you looking at me?" Liu Yao looked up and noticed Qing's eyes on him. Qing said it was okay, then typed in the dormitory group message, asking people not to say bad things about Professor Lu, and put the phone aside. "After dinner, I'll explain the wrong questions to you." Thinking that she got off work so late and still had to explain junior high school chemistry problems to herself, Qing couldn't bear it. "Sister, it's too late, I'm a little tired, how about we talk about it tomorrow?" Liu Yao originally wanted to say that today's work should be done today, but then he remembered that he was still a patient. He was indeed a little tired tonight and wanted to take a shower and go to bed. Liu Yao frowned. "I have classes tomorrow morning and afternoon." The classes she has to take are not just the applied chemistry class, not just the freshman class, and the content taught is not just polymer chemistry. Qing nodded and said, "Then I'll wait for you to come back in the evening. It's a good time for me to slowly digest what I learned today. But you have to read books by yourself at home." Liu Yao thought for a moment and said, "Pre-study is also a part of learning. Don't always wait for me. I have finished reading all the books you bought." Qing continued to nod. It took them a few minutes to finish their meal and clear the table. Liu Yao was about to get up and go back to the bedroom when he suddenly remembered something and stopped. "Do you want to take a shower? Wash. You are in good health now. Remember to wash with hot water instead of cold water. I will turn on the water heater for you." She doesn't usually use the bathroom in the living room, so the water heater is often turned off. Just as he was about to step into the bathroom, he suddenly noticed out of the corner of his eye that Qing was still wearing the military training uniform he had worn this morning and he had no clean clothes. Liu Yao suddenly felt a little regretful. Why did he ask him whether he wanted to take a shower? What if he has no clothes to change? Wear hers. Liu Yao took a deep breath. Now that the question had been asked, what else could he do? He couldn't take it back. Noticing her reaction, Qing was a little surprised. What was going on? Professor Lu seems hesitant. Do you think my showering is a waste of your water and electricity? I wasted it many times last night. It was not until Liu Yao handed him an unopened pair of furry purple pajamas that Qing finally understood why she took that breath. Purple. This must have been bought by Professor Lu for herself. She likes purple very much. This one has not been unpacked yet. So what kind of pajamas does Professor Lu usually wear? Purple must be one of her many options. Either Professor Lu has a pajamas of the same color in her closet, or she bought 2 of the same pajamas. Couple style. No wonder she seemed to have made some important decision just now. Qing was already laughing in his heart. The pajamas feel fluffy, have a smiley face on the chest, and a hat with ears on the back. Pajamas are something that best reflects a person's personality. After all, they are unlikely to be seen by anyone other than those close to them. Professor Lu appears to be fierce on the outside, but there is actually a little girl living in his heart. Qing took the pajamas from Liu Yao. Even though his mouth was grinning inside, he remained expressionless, as if he didn't notice anything. Thanks. Liu Yao looked a little unnatural, and after thinking for a while, he said, after taking a shower, I'll take you to the second bedroom later. Do I need to take you to the second bedroom? You took me there last night. Oh yes. Professor Lu made some noise in the second bedroom this afternoon. I guess he tried to cover it up and didn't want me to see it. After Qing came out of the shower, Liu Yao pushed open the door of the second bedroom. He finally knew what Professor Lu had been doing in the room in the afternoon. The quilt cover of the small bed in the second bedroom has been changed to light gray, and the pink decorations, except for the paint on the wall that cannot be removed, have basically been hidden by Professor Liu. Hidden in the shelf. The shelf that originally held stuffed dolls and doll boxes was now covered by a huge piece of cloth, making it impossible to see what was inside. The entire piece of cloth was stuffed into the wall side of the shelf. Yun Qing's eyes accurately captured the faintly visible tiny ends of electric wires hidden under the large cloth. He had no doubt that Liu Yao had installed an alarm device inside. Whenever he pulled the cloth, the alarm would sound, and Liu Yao in the master bedroom next door would hear the sound and chase after him to kill him. It is even possible that Liu Yao has software on her phone that is connected to this place, so she can monitor the movement of the cloth in real time at school. As expected, he is the rigorous Professor Liu. While I was worrying about the test paper, Professor Liu was also thinking hard in the second bedroom. Yun Qing, the actor, was possessed, with confused eyes, and asked in confusion, "Sister, what is in here? Why is it wrapped in cloth?" The purple furry pajamas were particularly dazzling in Liu Yao's eyes. Thinking of the fact that she had a pair of pajamas that were almost identical to this one in her closet, her expression looked a little unnatural. She liked this pair of pajamas so much that she bought two. She usually buys two of the styles of clothes she likes. However, when he heard Yun Qing's question, his eyes lit up with joy, and his expression didn't seem fake. He really had a blackout last night, and he couldn't remember what the room looked like. Liu Yao pursed his lips and said seriously, "Miscellaneous items." After saying that, she added one more sentence. "Don't open it if you don't have anything to do. Don't open it if you have something to do. Otherwise, I will kick you out of the house immediately." Yun Qing nodded seriously, "Understood. The bed is a little small, so it might be a bit crowded for you to sleep. This room was not originally intended to be used to entertain guests, so please bear with it." Liu Yao glanced at the room and looked at the computer desk on the right. "If you can't sleep later, you can play on the computer by yourself, but don't play too late. And don't use the computer to watch some weird things, otherwise, I will kick you out of the house." Yun Qing frowned. "What weird thing? You know it yourself." "I don't know. Something that will enrich your theoretical knowledge." Yun Qing understood. She remembered what she had said before, that she had more theoretical knowledge but no experience. Yun Qing said very seriously, "I never watch weird things." Snort. Liu Yao just snorted and said nothing more. He seemed not to believe it. He turned around and walked out, closing the door of the second bedroom behind him. "I really don't watch that stuff. With a beauty like you hanging around in front of me, why would I need to see that? Previous life? There was no need for that in his previous life, he was all about actual combat."